Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 142 of the NOCLIP podcast. It is Starfield Day, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming at you a day early today because we wanted to make sure that we got those hot Todd Howard buns fresh out of the oven and into your mouths, down your throats. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to cram our Starfield opinions down your throats. Jeremy Jane and Frank Cowley are here. We're going to talk about Starfield for the majority of today's podcast. We have some other bits and bobs to talk about at the end. The Making of Karateka and Armored Core 6 are also out. We've also harvested some of the best user questions from the world of xxx.com. And we'll be answering some of those as well. But before we get to any of that, I want to thank our amazing Battle Pass holders. Battle Royale games, Arno, Richard Matherson, James Brown, Jason Drury, Mark Rojas, Ryan Cobb, Cody Krieger, Tucker Morgan, Crimson Cyclist, Sven Huster, Carson, Tim Robinson, Forrest Pruitt, Andy Fegan, Darren Birmingham, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Cameron Ladd, Alex Sharp, Alex Goucher, George Sakotis, Jacob Godserve, Silventro, James Andrew Adams, Tohir Tiliev, and Ryson. Do those people like Starfield? We don't know. We only know if we like Starfield. And now we're going to talk about Bethesda Game Studios' most recent game, Starfield. Jeremy Jane, we're going to get into the specifics on this one. We're going to be spoiler free. We're going to keep it incredibly spoiler-free at the start. And then we might talk about one or two things, missions we did here and there later on in the podcast. But we're going to keep it totally spoiler-free. But there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of systems in this game. It's very complex, very broad and wide and everything. Before we get into any of that, gentlemen, do you like the fucking video game? Jeremy Jane, what's your vibe on Starfield? How much have you played and do you like it?
I have played 12 hours of this game.
Okay. A baker? No, that's just a dozen.
It's just almost a regular dozen.
A regular human's
dozen. I'm working
dozen.
on the baker. I do like this game. I have conflicted feelings about Starfield. I feel like we'll get into specifics, but I feel like there are moments where I'm like, this game is awesome. And there are moments where there are long periods of drudgery between the awesome moments. And I feel as if the long bits of drudgery could have been really interesting and maybe interesting to other people who have kind of different priorities and are interested in different elements of this world. But there are certain things that did not click with me, and so it fell a little flat. But that being said, it's incredibly polished. There's a lot of interesting things about this game. It's not a bad game. It's just I just played Oblivion, and so it's kind of, I don't know, maybe that's unfair to compare, but I loved Oblivion, and so I was like, oh, cool, space Oblivion. And it did not quite reach those heights for me.
Cool. Okay. That's interesting. And I'm definitely, I'm vibing. I understand where you're coming from on some of this stuff. Frank, what about you? How many hours you played and what's your feeling with Starfield?
I think I'm about 11 hours in and I like it. I'm not engaging with every system in the game. There's some stuff that's like, oh, that seems complicated. There's not a Reddit with all the answers on it. I'm going to ignore this for now.
Right, there isn't.
But the stuff I am naturally going to is like, oh, this feels good. This is fun. But I see where Jeremy's saying there's moments of dredge where it's like, okay, let me pick up this quest. Let me talk to this person. Once I'm actually like out in my spaceship, double jumping around, shooting monsters and stuff like that, it's like, oh, this is cool. Everything about it is slick, and I'm excited to talk about like aesthetics and things like that. But generally, I'm really stoked on this, and it's been very cozy and fun to escape into.
Excellent. I am 36 hours in. Wow. I think I'm level, I want to say 27 or something like that. Do you guys know what levels you are yet?
I think I'm 11 or 12 or something like that.
Yeah. Frank, any idea?
Yeah, I'm around the same. I think Haley Williams is level 11.
Oh, sorry, that's your character's name.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
I was like, she's breaking embargo?
No. I'm playing it for her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I hear what you guys are saying. So it's a great game. I think it's a great game. Whether or not it is like a fantastic game or whether or not it is like one of the best Bethesda games, I think is where I'm not quite sure, because I'm surprised how different it is. Like in some ways it is exactly one of those games, which I think actually caught me off guard a bit. I was like, oh yeah, this is 100% like Fallout 4 or Skyrim. Like you're all the same things. You're talking to people, you're doing fetch quests. You're picking locks. We're going to talk about the lockpick. They fucking did it. So I don't know how they fucking did it again, but they've got another different lockpick game, which I really like, and they put it in there. You're doing a lot of like diplomacy. You're putting your points into, various things which give you extra ways to talk to people. You're going from A to B. It's all that shit. It's so similar to that. But structurally, it's completely different because without having one big map where you can explore and you kind of know the boundaries of the world, this game does a little bit of an Elden Ring thing where I have no idea how big this thing is. It keeps getting bigger, but I have no idea how big it is because, my fucking warp drive can only go so far, and then there's pirates trying to blow me out of the sky. But because it doesn't have the empty space between towns that all those other games have, where that's where you do your random shit. Because you're always jumping to a place or landing on a part of a planet or doing that type of thing, the flow of the game is totally different. You're not just like out there listening to the pretty music in Oblivion and then doom to doom to doom to doom. Fuck, there's a goblin somewhere. It's not that. It's like everything is way more sort of prescribed, or you kind of know what's about to happen, or you're setting yourself up for something, and there's less. Which means I think that you spend a lot more time in menus looking for something fun to do, whereas in those other games, you didn't have that sense of being bored because you were walking to the next town. You know what I mean? So you kind of knew you were going to be entertained in a little bit. And if you came across a cave, then cool. And if you didn't, sure.
Yeah, the word that kept coming to mind in this game is, okay, have either of you played Daggerfall?
No.
Okay, so in Daggerfall...
Watched videos of it, but never played it.
So for the uninitiated, Daggerfall is the second Elder Scrolls game. Daggerfall had a world that was absurdly large. Like
biggest in video game history, I think? Is it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's like 150,000 square miles, or something absurd. But between points of interest in Daggerfall are these, it's basically tile based, kind of not unlike Starfield. And so I kept thinking of Daggerfall during Starfield because essentially in Daggerfall you can theoretically walk from A to B to C. It would take you an entire human life to beat the game playing in that way. But the problem is that the giant world becomes kind of trivialized when there are points of interest scattered throughout the world, but because the world is so large, it's like pouring a thimble of vodka into a giant bucket of soda. It's not a cocktail. And so I kind of felt that way with Daggerfall, and I kind of felt that way with Starfield. The problem is that the word that kept coming to mind for me when I was playing it was segmented, because I would essentially want to do things in Starfield, and to get from A to B to C was a series of menu, ship, menu, click, ship, click, menu, click. And it just felt like in Oblivion. And again, this is a thing that I think, I'm not saying this should have been No Man's Sky where everything is continuous, because it would have taken 100 years to build this
let's
video
back
game.
at it just for 1 second and just talk,
right.
because I want to keep it to Starfield if we can. But on that point, just to contextualize if people haven't played it yet, so one of the questions people had is, was this game like Starfield? Or was it like No Man's Sky, where you basically have these big planets that are procedurally generated, and you can land anywhere you want on it, it's based on an algorithm. And that's not really how the game works. And at the start I was like, oh, is this a tech reason, or is this a structure reason? I think the way it works, just in terms of like getting into planets, works for this game, but just to, I guess, establish it. Basically, when you're in the game, there are set cities, they're on certain planets, and when you are on your spaceship and you're getting out of the planet, you hit a button that says, go to orbit. And there's an animation, and then you're outside the planet. There is no you flying through the stratosphere like in No Man's Sky. When you're coming down to a planet, there is no you flying down through the atmosphere to a certain point. You are picking a place on a map, and it is going to a load screen and then loading you there. Once you're there, you can wander infinitely into many different bounds of the planet, but you always have to come back to your ship to take off anyway. So it's not like you were like, I don't think you can wander to another city somewhere. Maybe you can, but I don't think you'd ever want to try. And I think the idea of doing that would even be pointless in the first place. So you're doing a lot of like, you're going down two parts of the planets, and planets can have multiple different, but you can land anywhere, quote unquote. You don't have to land at the parts that they're saying, but you're still picking it on a map. I'm picking here because I see there's copper there, and I'm trying to get my scanner to scan this entire map and it says that I've only got 88% of all the things in this particular biome scanned, so I'll go down to that particular part of the map. So sorry, Jeremy. So that's whereas so that's, I guess, how the stuff is kind of spread out. So you're doing a lot of menus in and out to get to various objectives.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, I think personally, I think it's a system that really works. I don't think if you were in real time traversing a world of this scale and it was totally seamless, I don't think that would have enhanced the game really, because I think it would have just been traversing a lot of empty space. But I do kind of feel like when I was playing Oblivion, some of the best moments were I had to go to a city for the first time and I wasn't fast traveling there. And along the way, there would be these kind of emergent moments. So you'd find a little village where everyone's invisible. You'd find like a guy who needs your help. And there are moments kind of like that in Starfield. People will approach you in space. They'll hail your ship down and ask you for help and stuff like that. And there are emergent moments.
And on the planets. So they do They do a thing where they will, because the game is not like married to where everything is. And I've actually had trouble trying to find out when these things happen dynamically or not. But they do create they will put like a dynamic place somewhere you've landed, hoping you'll find it. And then there's a quest within that. There's like some of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so the tiles when you're on the surface of the planet have POIs. So they'll have, you have a scanner and you can obviously scan for minerals and stuff, but there will also be things on the map where it's like a little symbol of an arch or a little symbol of a flag, and there'll clearly be POIs that kind of lead to side quests. I guess the problem is that,
just to clarify, those don't actually lead to side quests. They're just things that you scan that are part of the scanning thing. Have you 100% of the planet yet scanning?
No, but I have found interesting caves and stuff within them that were not quests that I had previously, like POIs that seemed. Maybe side quest is overstating it.
They're not quests. Okay, they don't go in your
side activities.
Yeah. They don't go in your quest log or anything.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's a good differentiation. Yeah, there are POIs where there are interesting activities, like dungeons, I guess is the word you would use, space dungeons. But I did feel like because the surface tiles are so big and because there's maybe a half dozen POIs on the map, it felt like they were all so far apart that there was kind of no emergent moments where I would stumble across things like that, other than I would stumble across resources and kind of random monsters, and sometimes there would be pirates would land on the surface, which was cool. I actually did really like seeing a ship land in the distance and be like, who are those guys? Yeah. But it did feel like there was kind of nothing interesting popping up to me en route from A to B. I would land on a planet and I'd be like, this is where I'm going. Right. And between there, I was kind of just auto running and waiting. I might have had a different feeling. I think I was closer to how you feel about 12 hours ago. Okay.
But so what's weird, what's happening, because you're 100% right. That's the experience that I had, and Frank, is it similar for you probably? You're just bouncing around these planets and doing stuff, but you're not you're not finding emergent moments so much.
Yeah, I'm kind of sticking to what the quests that do pop up. I tried going off the beaten path once where I landed on the planet and I saw there's a cave activity. I went in there and there wasn't really anything inside. So my thought was does a quest eventually lead me here, or is this just nothing?
Yeah. I had that once or twice where I was I found an abandoned space station in space, and I went in thinking, it'll be like a vault, right? It'll be this curated sort of what's the interesting thing about this spaceship? And then there actually wasn't anything, and there wasn't much in there either that was worth getting. What has happened to me since, and I would say that I am sort of in the second act of the game, something sort of a relatively big story beat happened a couple of hours back. And what's happening now is the quests that I completed in the sort of first 20 hours have sort of knock-oned down the road, and I am now interacting with when they were quests I thought I had completed. They were done, and now I am finding them as I walk around. I am bumping into people in the world, and also spaceships and shit that I have had interactions with in the past. And they're like, oh, what are you doing here? I had a really weird moment. I don't want to spoil it. Where I went to one of the towns is a sort of a cowboy town. I'm not sure if you guys have been to that one yet. It's the Fallout New Vegas planet, I guess. And I went to a shitty zoo that this guy was running. It was in the town, and I was like, oh fuck it, I'll pay him 10 credits to go see this zoo. and I bumped into people I knew, like completely random. Like I was like, I don't want to say exactly what it was because it'll spoil it, but like I said to my wife, I was like, what the fuck are these are such and such. What are they doing here? I was like, actually, I thought it was a bug. I was like, they use the same model as this person I know from this other town, from this other planet. And then they turned around and went, what are you doing here? It was like so random. And it ended up like just being like a small little moment, but it was super, super strange. So it's I'm starting to see some of the like longitudinal, how this is quite different to those games. I don't know how much it's going to pay off, but it's made me really like in the way that the factions in Vegas, you had to make decisions that then had knock-on effects down the road. I'm now starting to be like, oh fuck, there was that one quest where I did this thing. I instead of shooting that guy and bringing him to justice, I let him pay me 50,000 credits, and then I lied to my to the cop people, and I'm like, that's totally gonna come back and kick me in the ass now, isn't it?
Yeah, I had a similar thing. I won't say who the people were that I ran into or where I ran into them, but I met some people early on who were very innocuous, and later ran into them in a place that was super not innocuous, and it was very funny to talk to them and be like, what are you doing here? And they were kind of like embarrassed and weirded out that I was catching them there and stuff. And yeah, there were fun moments like that. Those were some of my favorite moments. I wish this game leaned way harder into kind of those. Maybe it does later on. Maybe there's way more of this in the later hours. But I wished I was doing more kind of like walking around, talking to people, navigating social situations. I feel like the game shined for me when I would get to a big POI, like a quest related POI, not like a random cave, but like a nightclub where they're doing hallucinogens and stuff like that. And it would be kind of it felt like there were two types of dungeons. There was like a base where I had to fight through 4 floors of space pirates, and that was amazing. And then there was like a weird nightclub where I had to navigate social situations, which is like a social dungeon. And I kind of feel like that's where the game shines for me. It's just that I feel like outside of those, I was just kind of bored, because I feel like what you're supposed to be doing is when you're wandering those big open plains and stuff and using your scanner, you'll find like, oh, that's like helium-3. Oh, that's like Xeno's sodium chlorofluorate. And I think for people who really liked Fallout 4's the, like base building mechanics and the trading post stuff, I think, and people who want to upgrade their ship and people who want to like build crafting materials and add barrel mods to their guns, I think people who are really into that stuff will feel like this world is a lot less sparse than I did, because I think those people will look around and see on a planet that I clock as like totally empty except for a bunch of random mobs and minerals I don't want to get. I think they'll be like, oh, there's like helium-3 here. I need that for my this thing.
Which is funny because again, I think I was I total like fucking got, what is it, like clouded over my eyes when it came to any of the base building. I don't really like base building stuff, and a lot of that sort of stuff. And weirdly, I think either because I was getting bored and I started tinkering with some of the systems, only now have I started to like sort of those have come into focus for me a bit. The other thing I thought was like, oh, I don't really care about the ships. I was like, the ships, you know, you get to walk around and they're beautiful. I think the insides of the ships, the designs and all that sort of stuff. I think the design of this game is really good. Like, in some ways, I wish some of the cities were a bit more bombastic and a bit more wild and interesting. Like Neon is kind of like, maybe it's because Cyberpunk came out, but like Neon is like a neon city, and it's some of the designs of the city are cool, like the way they're set up, but like visually they're not so arresting, I guess. But then were these games ever that way? Even Skyrim, I think Solitude was the only city that really blew me away. The rest of them were all kind of like fairly, you know, normal or whatever. But at a certain point I realized, oh, I need to get a better ship. Like I am getting my ass kicked in these space battles, and I completed a quest and I got a ship for it. Like I completed a really long quest line and I ended up getting an insanely cool ship with it. And now it's like my baby. Like now I like adore it. I've been adding to it. I've been modding it. I've been adding doing the shipbuilding stuff and making it look nicer and shit. But I couldn't have given a shit for the longest time. But I'm with you on that stuff. It's Frank, I've definitely spent some time trying to figure out what to do, which I never feel like I had that inclination in some of those other open world games.
Yeah, Frank, have you engaged with the crafting at all, or like are those the types when you play games like this? Do you like to do that kind of stuff where you're looking around at minerals and thinking about what you can build? Or
so that's the stuff I kind of checked out early on. Is I was scanning the planets, which seemed fun. It felt very much like Minecraft. Like I was whatever, melting away minerals and collecting it. And then my inventory would get full immediately. And I was like, wait, why am I doing this? Hold on.
Yeah.
and I can get into the inventory stuff later.
Should we just talk about inventory
right.
if you want as well? If you want, because I saw it on your notes as well. So let's talk about it.
So again, I can't, anytime I play these games, I can't help picking up everything because I love to min-max. Ooh, the weight of this is 0.05, but it's worth 200 credits. Okay, that's a good bargain. Oh, this weighs 1 and it only sells for 10. I do that, and even like Cyberpunk, Fallout, Oblivion, all of these games, I'm obsessed with min-maxing the credit stuff. I will say the way they handle like fast travel, inventory, over encumber is better than it has ever been.
Yeah.
When you get over encumbered in this game, you can still move and run, but you deplete your oxygen. And once you run out, the way this is handled is actually pretty cool. Like the like, I don't know, your survival meters and stuff. When you deplete your oxygen, then you start filling up on CO2. And once your CO2 is full, then you start depleting health. So if you really want to, you can keep sprinting while over encumbered, but you do have your companions that you can offload your extra inventory to. And then what's cool is whenever you're back in your ship, you can also store your inventory on your cargo hold. And so now you have like multiple spaces, and if you have more than one companion, you can put extra inventory on those companions on the ship. So you actually kind of have a bigger thing, and you can also upgrade your cargo hold. You can upgrade your skill tree to give you more holding stuff.
And my favorite addition to that is that if you're at one of the trading posts, or I think if you're at a merchant, you can sell from your ship's cargo hold. So you don't have to keep going back. Like when I saw that, I was like, thank Jesus. Because like the idea of having to like be a fucking pack mule between that. So I thought that was awesome. And there's trading posts kind of everywhere. Like everywhere you land, they have a little kiosk and they're like, yo, you want to sell some shit? You got too much membrane you want to get rid of? Go for it.
Yeah, and I haven't done such a good job. And that's the thing. Like I will usually go online to look up like, all right, what's safe to sell? What's not safe to sell? And it's like, I just have to figure it out. But I'm kind of like, okay, you know what? That's fine. But I probably haven't decluttered my inventory as much. What I started doing this morning was like going through I will carry one gun of each ammo type in my inventory just in case.
Yeah.
But then I have one gun that is so overpowered. It's like a legendary drop. It's like a laser gun, but it melts people and it's amazing.
Oh, nice.
It's so much better. And then I have one revolver that does like 100 damage per shot. And it's like these two guns, I don't know if they're broken or I got lucky. The rest of them are okay, so it's fun to circle. You can also give your companions other weapons. So now what I need to do is just like, all right, sell the weapons I don't care, because the game is very friendly with like loot and stuff like that. Every time you're going into a base or somewhere to fight enemies, every single enemy, just like Fallout, whatever, you can loot their inventory, their helmets, and that's why you get over encumbered quickly. Every enemy you kill has a space suit, a helmet, their internal clothes, their weapons, and it's like
and their booster, which is like, which again, it seems like a smart thing to do as well. But the booster is like, I guess it's like the thing that makes you jump as well, or do your double jumps and stuff. But it's just like a general perk. It's just like it has just like a bunch of perks on it that you can just, or attributes that are separate to the suit, which I thought was clever. Of just like, there's some systems in this game which could have been 50 times more complicated, and I think that's one of them, where they're just like, you got one weapon, you got one throwable, you can hot swap between the weapons if you want. We put a little radial dial in there, it feels really good. You got your suit and you got this one other thing. Oh, and your helmet. I guess your helmet is also part of that too.
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk to you guys about the weapons, because it sounds like Frank kind of had a similar experience to me, which is that the first combat encounter I did was sort of balanced. The second combat encounter I did, when I didn't have any kind of fancy guns, was me killing one dude, scouring for ammo, and then unloading on the next group of guys, and then scouring for ammo. So it was kind of this, I thought the game was going to be about like ammo scarcity. But during that encounter, I got sort of my first like legendary drop or whatever, like a yellow text one and a purple or blue text one. And they are so strong. I felt like I got like a level. I feel like I got like end game raid loot is what it felt like, because it's sort of okay. Before I say this, the combat is probably, other than social stuff, is my favorite part of the game.
It's very good. It
feels very good.
And you guys haven't. I know you haven't played Fallout 4, Jeremy. Frank, have you played Fallout 4 or 76?
Just a bit, but not much.
So those games were better than 3 and New Vegas for sure when it came to shooting, but they still weren't fantastic. This is basically perfect. Like it's great. And I've been playing both on PC and on console, and also it's got cross save. So I've been like jumping between the two of them. And the shooting, and I think it changes it, because of the shooting on PC, I've been having a great time like headshotting people and doing all that, but I don't have that on the controller. But the combat doesn't feel any more difficult, which I think is good. Maybe it was a bit easier on PC. But sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree. The headshots is an interesting thing to mention as well, because once I got a scoped rifle, I ran into an enemy. So sometimes you'll see kind of like elite enemies. They'll have a health bar, and then they'll have these sort of segmented chunks. And essentially, it's like for each segmented chunk, they have another health bar. So it'll be like a guy who has 4 health bars essentially. And I headshotted one of those guys as soon as I got my rifle, and he died instantly.
Oh, really?
And I screamed in joy. I don't know if it's like that for every elite enemy, and presumably only for kind of like humanoid enemies. But I thought that was really cool. I thought I was going to have to headshot it, because like this game, it's hard to avoid the comparison to the Outer Worlds. Like this
100%.
This game feels so much like the Outer Worlds, just bigger and less like Joss Whedon.
It's like a higher. Yeah, you're right. Higher budget and less camp.
Yeah, exactly.
Which honestly, sometimes I'm like, I wish this had a bit more camp.
Yeah, I feel that.
And I think also maybe the companions. I think the companions in the Outer Worlds were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And I've struggled to connect with most of the companions in this game.
Yeah. Before I talk about the combat war, I have to address that, because I won't say any of the companions' names because I don't want to like color anyone's expectations for them. But sort of the first companion I got, I was like, oh, okay, they're fine, they're like okay, but I'm curious to see who else. And then as I got more companions, it made me like the first companion more, because I was like, oh, okay, they're just fine, but everyone else is just kind of boring.
I've been solo for them. I actually last night I got in a weird thing where I think I had a bug where one of the companions wouldn't fuck off. So I'm hoping he's fucking off now. I can't tell. But I had to go to bed, and I was like, is it? Because I can't. Every time I go talk to him, he just keeps saying, "Oh, I guess I gotta go," and then he's not going. So hopefully he's gonna fuck off.
He's like, I won't leave the party at like 4 a.m. You're like,
Yeah,
man,
exactly.
I gotta go to bed. He's like, yeah. So anyway, this is a really great party.
We're still hanging, right?
We're still chilling though, right? You want to watch a movie?
Actually, speaking of bugs, sorry to tangent you again. Have you guys had? I've had like a couple of ones. Number one, it's way less buggy, I feel like, just in general, than their games. And I do think, and I would love to interview them about this, I think this game was probably way fucking easier to bug test and to develop in little like squads, because the game is so segmented. Because it's not one big map, there is no need for like the team working on Neon can just work on that fucking city to their heart's content. Over here, it's mostly self-contained. The logic, like there's quests that go between cities and stuff, but it's not like they're all in their own little. So it makes sense that it's less buggy because it's not one map. You know what I mean? Or like those games are never just one map. You went in a dungeon, it unloaded the other thing and whatever. But so I do think that's the case. I have one really annoying bug, which I got super early, which is that I've scanned one planet to 98%. It's a quest planet. So when you're scanning the planets, it's just like No Man's Sky. If you played No Man's Sky, it's the same as No Man's Sky almost, where you're scanning plants and flora, fauna, a couple of minerals, things like that. You have to scan the flora and fauna like sometimes like 8 times, I think. It depends on what it is. You have to scan like 8 instances of this plant to have the plant be scanned, and the same with the animals. And then once you get 100%, you get some XP for it, and you can sell the data. Once you get 100% of a solar system, you get XP for that, and you can also sell the data. So if you're into that sort of stuff, I've been enjoying doing it in Sol and Alpha Centauri. I think that's a lot of fun. But I have one planet where it says, because on the map it'll tell you in each biome. You'll see it via color if you're in like the tropics or the thing and the blah, blah, blah. It'll tell you how much of a percentage you've done. And it says 100% on all of them. And I've only got 98%. And it's pissing me off. It's sitting there on my quest log. That, I've had a couple of minor bugs, like little things here and there, but generally it's been fine. What about you guys?
For me, one thing I noticed kind of, maybe not immediately, but a lot of the times when I would go up to talk to NPCs, their backs would be turned to me. And I think by like the second text prompt, they would like turn around, but it'd be a lot. Yeah, it would be that. They would have a full conversation. And it's like, okay. So that, again, minor, a few NPCs, like when I'm in shops, will kind of walk up and then knock over a tray of objects. And like, it's just light, goofy physics stuff, but nothing that's been frustrating. No, like, I mean, like, not to beat it down, but like compared to like the launch of like Cyberpunk, where it's like every quest is something that's like annoying. It's like, oh, this game works. This is nice. One goofy encounter thing on a planet, I ran into like a monster, and I found it very easy to kind of just bait it behind like a door, like a cage where it couldn't advance.
I did that too on one of them. Yeah.
Eventually, it like jumped over, but I got like 70% of its health down by just pecking it, and then it gave me so much XP, and I'm like, ooh, that was a little. But again, I feel like that's kind of the charm of these games is like, oh, it's kind of it can be a little goofy, but if you enjoy it, but that's it, nothing severe.
I had one combat encounter in one of the aforementioned 4 levels of buildings where you have to shoot through 4 levels of pirates or whatever, and I had one where I had gone through 3 levels, and then there was this huge warehouse full of them. And I was like, you've got to be, I'm running out of ammo, man. You've got to be fucking kidding me. I did not know that. So I just said, fuck this. And I just ran through them to where the exit door was, because I knew the last guy was there. I'm like, fuck you. I'm just like sprinting. And then I sprinted past all of them. And then I got into the room where like the last person was. And I had one of these before where there was like it was the same situation kind of where you had one person had like completely surrounded herself in robots. And you had to like shoot through all the robots, unless you use your boost pack to just like jump to the top of the thing that she's in and go straight in there. And that's what I did. So like, I liked how also, you know, it let me run past all those people. It wasn't like fucking Call of Duty or Destiny or something where like you have to shoot all the people to get to, like, no, it's still one of these games where if you can get there, you can get there. Like, go for it. Knock yourself out. If you can pickpocket somebody and get that thing. I've had so much fun pickpocketing people and just getting around quests. Pickpocketing the right person who I know has got a key to this thing and then getting in there and then stealing some shit and then selling it. Like, I've been having a blast doing that.
That's kind of the appeal for me of this style of RPG anyway. When I played The Outer Worlds, since we mentioned it, there's one part of that game where you can either save up a ton of money to buy access to a place, or you can fight your way tediously through there. There's like an access road that's full of aliens. And so I just kept going there and fighting a ton of dudes, leaving, buying a bunch of ammo, coming back. And I was just like coming back and delivering death and then leaving and doing the same thing. And part of that was, you know, like hiding behind a big crate and stuff and peeking out. And I don't know. I've always felt like part of the fun of RPGs is like save scumming and finding optimal strategies and kind of like trying to break them a little bit. I feel like that even when it's not intended by the design of the game, it does feel like that's kind of an emergent part of the design is it's like immersive Sims, you know, part of the joy is taking all of the things that they built and seeing if the players can break it or bend it in interesting ways. So yeah, like the you know, Bethesda jank or whatever on some of that stuff, I actually really enjoy. Or, you know, when you're in a conversation, I had one where I was talking to a guy in kind of like a busy city port, and an NPC pathed up behind him and kind of got stuck on him. And so he was just standing there staring at me, and there was a guy kind of just like staring at the back of his head the entire conversation. And I love that shit. I don't know, like those are
me too. Yeah,
it's so funny and weird. And I just like, or when like you guys said, like someone's like turned around and they're like, oh, so the destiny of the galaxy.
Have you guys had the thing where, because now the camera is locked to your perspective, I guess maybe it always was. Have you guys had the thing where like you'll be talking to somebody and then suddenly like your perspective changes? Like it just slightly turns like this and then on the webcam because an NPC has pushed you.
Oh no, that's really funny though. That's amazing.
It always makes me laugh when it happens.
The best one for me was this is technically a bug, but it did make me laugh. So I feel like if there's a bug and it makes me laugh, that it's a feature. I was having the most trivial conversation with an NPC, and then a story moment happened, and so there was this incredible counterpoint between talking to a little girl about books and then people talking about like the destiny of the galaxy, and the game didn't cut out of the trivial conversation to initiate the other conversation. They were both happening kind of like co-tangent.
Oh, that's cool.
So she'd be like, yeah, books. And then the guy would be like, the destiny of the galaxy. And it just kept like the subtitles kept like swapping out and the camera kept changing. And it was insane.
It's funny. I've had a couple of, my favorite moments have been when some of this dynamic storytelling stuff has been going on, where I had something happen that I think was a complete coincidence, but felt like this incredible story moment. And I can't tell unless I need someone else to talk. This one thing happens, which then basically changes one of the places that you've been to a lot of the times. And I was there and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. What's happened here? And then I had the like, stop right there guard come up and be like, yo, you're on my fucking list. And I'm pretty sure I was on my list because I had a bounty. Did you get this? And he brought me off to like some other spaceship thing that I had to do, but it happened like during a really pivotal, like not a quest, but like during like almost like a epilogue of something big that happened.
Really?
So
Okay.
so it felt magnanimous because it was like, I was like, oh fuck, I've got to go past the security guards. But then he was like, he didn't care that it was now. It was like, we're going.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so it felt really cool, and I've had other smaller ones, and I think this is what I hope the game does this more, and I kind of wished it did, where you've had like wacky emergent things happen. But I had one of these ones where I was just going, I was like rushing to another planet. I was trying to get this quest done quickly because it was on a timer, and then when I got there was a fucking ship that hailed me about something, and then it ended up being like escalated into a fight because they were trying to dupe me, and then I was like in a fight with them, and I was almost dead because I hadn't fixed the hull of my ship, and I'm like shit, but it's only one ship, so maybe I can take them out. And then boom, 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 and like I'm about to die, and then I knock their engines out, and I'm like, oh fuck, I can dock them. So I just like pulled up to them, boarded them, got in. The ship was fucked, and obviously the anti-grav was broken because everything was floating.
Oh, cool.
And then I was floating, so I was using my jets to go around, and then I opened the door. I could see the two fuckers there with their guns up to the door waiting for me to open it. And I opened the door, and it went opened up, and my gun I'm using at the moment, I have a couple of them, but I have a close quarters gun that's basically the fucking Doom 2 double shotgun. It only has 2 rounds in it. You go boom, boom, so I guess 4 or whatever. I don't think it's actual double shotgun, but I can fire it twice. And the door opened, and the guy was pointing, he had me dead to rights, and I like just jet padded to the side, shot him, and then I fucking flew like 30 feet back because of the force of the shotgun.
Oh, that's unbelievable. I
was
haven't
so
had any
cool.
0G fights like that. That's really cool.
So that was just like this awesome, like, and then I basically shot those 2 guys, emptied out their whole ship, undocked, and then turned around and just blew the fucking shit up. That's
awesome.
It was like, that was fun.
That's really cool. I feel like I can't help but think, again, I'm not trying to, I realize that the game is segmented very intentionally for both technical and design reasons, but I can't help but think that moment would have been so cool if it was totally seamless, and if you pulled up, like opened their door and they all got sucked out into the vacuum of space.
Oh yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? There is a temptation for me to imagine a version of this game where it is more seamless like that, but that sounds really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was neat. I haven't had any like proper bugs. The only one I can remember now was after it was a long day. It was like it was like 2 a.m. and people's skin wouldn't load, so it was just a bunch of eyeballs looking at me. So I just turned off the computer and turned it back on again. It was fine.
I had that same moment where I was on the list of the authorities and they took me to a place, and the way in which it happened for me was totally different. So it was me and the first companion you get, who at the time I was kind of, I was like, I'm so indifferent to you. I'm so like ambivalent and bored, and I just don't care. And I was lost in a city. I couldn't find where I was supposed to go, and like the waypoint was kind of misleading. So I just started killing people because I just like I felt like. So I'm also playing Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment, and I love the characters and worlds so much that I'm so like if I offend a character that I like, I'll replay the last 30 minutes to avoid. It's like Disco Elysium. When you piss off Kim, you're like, I would do anything. I'll die for Kim. And I just didn't care as much about these characters. So I kind of I became like a sociopath. I was like, there's like a sociological study you could do on my mental state in RPGs based on how integrated I feel into the social fabric. So I started killing people, and 2 interesting things happened. First of all, it led to an interesting side quest because I was like on the list of security. So that same thing happened for me at a different point. But the other thing that was interesting that happened is my companion, who I was indifferent to, was angry at me because I had acted like a sociopath or a psychopath murderer. And that persisted, obviously, because I wanted to see where the side quest went, so I didn't reload. And so they were angry at me after. And the interesting thing was that then all of their responses became so cold and indifferent towards me that I was like, oh no, like this is way worse. Like it was better when I didn't care about them. Now they're mad at me and they're on my ship and they're kind of like, yeah, whatever. I don't want to get out of my face. And I was like, oh fuck, this sucks. And that was kind of a turning point for me when initially I got back in their good graces. I was like, all right, I don't want to piss this person off again. Like them being mad at me, like they negged me into liking them.
That's so
like,
funny.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you could treat them mean, keep them keen. Eh?
Yeah.
I have just had a similar experience, which is why I'll put an asterisk on this on the companion stuff, where there's like a big story beat kind of thing has happened, and it's actually made me connect a lot more with the crew over it. Some more than others. Some don't actually fucking want to see me ever again, I think, over decisions I made. So it's made me like cling to the ones who have a little bit more. It's also worth mentioning that like this organization constellation that in the main quest you're basically part of happens like right at the start. Those people you're with as part of that can be companions in a way, but they're also just they can come on missions. You can ask them to come on missions, but then there are separate people that are also just companions you can assign to your ship. You can just have them in your ship, or you can take them on quests. You can do whatever you want. How many of us went for the adoring fan?
Oh, I chose
all
it,
three.
yeah.
All three. What else did you pick for your perks? I got him, and I went for the parents.
Yes, of course.
You went for the parents as well.
The parents is one of the best things, and
Parents are
I don't
great.
even want to like extrapolate on why, because I just think people should pick it.
They are not the vibe I was expecting.
No, me
I was
neither.
expecting some weirdos or some shitheads.
Yeah.
And they are so fucking sweet.
I know. They're like incredibly normal, and
They're so normal.
I can't imagine
Hi, honey.
not picking that perk unless your parents had like recently passed away and you wanted to avoid having like a game traumatize you.
Totally.
I can't imagine why you wouldn't pick this perk. It's so funny. and delightful.
I could see this making you miss your parents. Like,
yeah.
They are very and again, it's dynamic. Like, you know, sometimes they like pop by your work and like are chatting to your colleagues and shit. And you're
I know
like,
that embarrassed me. They were at my work when I got back one time. And I was like, "Mom, what are you doing? Like, come on, chill. Like, you can't just show up to my office."
It's so funny.
Those were some of the best story moments for me, and I mean that kind of highlights for me that the social aspects of this game were what made me connect with it. It feels like. We've talked about this before on the podcast of kind of like the strong theming in RPGs of zones and of characters is really essential because it creates this kind of salience in your brain of like, you know, you play old JRPGs and you're like, I got to go to the snow village with the snow people. And there's like the lead snow chief. And in your brain, that feels very distinctly different than going to the fireplace with the fire people. And I feel like you said, the cities in this they're like serviceable. They look really good, but they kind of like Neon is maybe one of the standouts and is still kind of just like a suburb of cyberpunk.
Right. Yeah.
And but the parents were one of those moments where it's like these are very salient characters. Like if I run into them in a place I don't expect them, my brain lights up because I'm like, what are you doing here? Like this is crazy. And there are not that many characters that I feel that way about in this game.
So that's the thing that I'm wondering 100 hours into this, does everyone feel a bit different? Because that started to happen to me.
Okay, good.
Where it's people who I had the first quest in the game with and people who I had other quests with and weird side stories that I've done, and now they've started to pop up in different places, or I'm running into them again and the context has changed. I had a really weird one where in Neon there was there's just like a tower building that you go into where one of your compatriots owns a business there and you're popping in, but you can just go to the other floors of the building and there are like other companies there, and one of them was called like Celt Corp or something. It was like Irish sounding, and I was like, oh, I gotta check this out. And I went in, and it's sure enough, there's like a bunch of Irish people running this like fucking corporation, and there's a girl behind the counter who, you know, wants to get money off of this, or this guy owes the company money, but it's her dad's company, and she fancies the guy, and she's like, oh, can you help me? So you end up being this like, you know, and then you go downstairs, and he's kind of like I'd say like Central African sort of accent to him and stuff. And you're talking to him and he's like starting this business, and he was like way too confident about the business before, you know, so it's like not making any money and he thought he was going to be doing. So then you can say tough shit, or you can pay him the money, or you can go on like this long quest to see if you can get him to earn the money himself. And then, so I just like, and this was like a random building that I went in. So some of it's funny. I've had times where I've been bored because I've looked at my quest log and I don't want to scan any planets. I don't want to do any dog fighting. I don't really want to do any more of the main quest at the moment. They're, those missions are, a bit more linear or whatever, scripted. But there's nothing I'm really vibing, like nothing I really want to go do. And those would be the moments in Oblivion or New Vegas where I just wander off into the fucking desert, right? And just find some shit, and you can't do that. So what I've started to do, and it actually happened because my daughter sat down with me and I was like, oh, I can't shoot anything now, so I better just like role play. So I started walking around one of the towns, and then I kept bumping into missions. Like I kept having conversations overheard or noticing something and going, oh, that's an interesting thing. And then I started to like slow it down a bit. And I was like, oh, this is feels more like it now. Like I'm kind of, the game is almost reacting to the fact that I'm not running from A to B to C all the time. Because like you do a lot of like you get to the point, right, where you've completed a thing on a planet, and the next part of the mission is like fucking 3 galaxies away on a planet, and you just go to your menu and go travel there, and it just fucking, you appear on Mars, and that's it, right? You don't have to do the blah, 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 which thank fuck they do that, because otherwise the game would be just unbelievably annoying. You'd be constantly going up into space, fucking go light jump, going down, it's getting scanned, go blah, 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 landing the fucking thing, getting out of your cockpit. Like you can just go, I want to be in this part of the town, and you'll just like load that part of the town. Sometimes there is like a thing you have to do on the way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of feel like I'm starting to see that I think maybe Starfield is a slow burn game, because the first kind of, I don't know, it's not that long. It's maybe like 10 to 20 minutes at the most. The intro sequence I thought was incredibly boring. I thought I thought the start of this game was so unimpressive. I was shocked that they chose to do it, especially because like Morrowind, you get off the boat and you're like in this new place and people are like, oh, you're like an outsider. Even, Skyrim isn't even my favorite Elder Scrolls game, but being on the wagon and the guy is like, oh, good, you're awake. Like that stuff is cool.
And then a dragon fucking turns up.
And then a dragon
when you're getting your
turns up.
head cut off or whatever. Yeah.
I understand why they made you a miner. There's nothing that makes sense for the game, for you're doing a lot of mining and it's kind of tied to the story. But the fact that there's this like 20-minute guided sequence of just like slow walking NPCs talking about mining, and you're following them, and they're like, well, this is where we get the steel, and you're like, I don't care.
There's a lot of there's like an extended onboarding as well, because even after that, like Skyrim, once you do that whole thing and you get out, I mean, you're kind of walking down that path, but it is kind of like go explore the world. And in Oblivion, once you get out of the fucking tunnel, it's go explore the world. Whereas in this, they do have to teach you a lot. Like they do have to like give you a lot of soft tutorializing. So I feel like I didn't go off the beaten path for like 3 hours, maybe more, because you have to go find the organization and go to this town and do this and that, which is all well and good. But it's like, yeah, there's a lot of that. I try. So this is kind of how I approach these games. I went off the beaten path as soon as humanly possible, nice. Because I'm just curious how games will accommodate that type of behavior. And I went to a planet. I landed on the surface, and I just started walking. And I was like, I just want to see, is this Daggerfall or is this Oblivion? And I got to like a mining base and there were robots, and I was like, oh, this is cool. All right, this is interesting. And then they had like a little house, and I opened the house. They all started shooting at me, and I got scared, and I killed the robots, and there was just kind of nothing there. And nothing really happened. I got like a little bit of loot and some credits and stuff. There was a computer inside, and I was like, oh, cool, I can like access the computer. And it had like a button prompt to use the computer, and it didn't do anything. I don't know if that was a bug or if there was just nothing on the computer. It must have been. I bet in my experience, what that one button would have done is turn off robots or get robots to like you, which I actually like that they have that. There's just a button that's like, oh yeah, the robots will protect this user. Which basically it's just a button for robots will attack everyone else except you. Don't worry about it, bro.
Yeah, and the robots themselves were like, they were funny. They were quipping about how there used to be humans working here, and like productivity was way down. They were like they said the optimal amount of they said the optimal crew for this mining base is upwards of 4 robots and a maximum of 0 humans.
That's great.
And I thought that it was like really, really good offbeat writing. But I just kind of like nothing happened, and I feel like. Yeah, I don't know. My curiosity was not rewarded for just venturing off. Whereas my intro to Oblivion was, I instantly went off and was like, I'm not going to do a quest. And I found a little hamlet where there was nobody there. And it turns out everyone in the hamlet was invisible. And it led to this amazing quest. Like one of the...
so good.
You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like it's tough to have a world this big and have it not feel sparse in terms of like actual quest, like talking to people and doing things and things that feel like meaningfully structured and reward your curiosity.
I do think it's a slow burn, but I will say that I had this little Jeremy Jane in the back of my head almost the entire time I was playing, and he was whispering in my ear, more weird.
Yeah.
Remember the conversation we had last week?
100%. That's because I was playing Starfield.
Oh, Ross, okay, well, there you go. So I hadn't really played much, I don't think, until then. I think I played one night because I was in Mexico, so I've been sort of playing catch-up. That's funny you said, because in my head, I wasn't thinking about Starfield at all, but then subsequently, I was like, oh, yeah. Like, and I don't know, I always feel like even like fucking whatever, 30-something hours in, I always feel like you never know what's just around the corner or blah, blah, blah. But it, especially when I'm thinking about the Outer Worlds a little bit, there does feel like there's just not enough. You could use a little bit more weird. And the conversation we were having last week was about like how as team sizes have gotten bigger, development wise, the weird people get diluted a little bit. You know, talking about old Bethesda games, obviously that make, you know, Morrowind is made by whatever, 24 people. Oblivion was even made by, or Skyrim was made by 100 people. Obviously this is a much bigger team. It's like, I don't know, somewhere between 300 and 500 people, I think, working on this at BGS Maryland, and presumably maybe their Austin office, the 76 people perhaps helped. I don't know, maybe the crowd up in Canada, I'm not quite sure. But there are, whenever the weird happens, I love it. Like there have been some weird quests that have popped up, and whenever they are, I'm like, more of that. Like give me, and what's weird is, it's been reminding me about weird quests in Oblivion and Skyrim and in Fallout 4. I think Fallout 4 is incredibly underrated. I get that people don't like those games, and I get that especially when it became a shooter and they weren't as good at the shooting. Like in Fallout 3, everyone just used fucking VATS. If you didn't use VATS, you were a psychopath. Like shooting in that game was fucking god awful, and it was just like, using VATS is so much better. Fallout 4 let you free shoot and VATS, but the free shooting was almost good enough, but not good enough. So you'd end up having no fun doing the regular shooting. And then VATS wasn't totally frozen either. It was kind of slowed down a bit. So it kind of maybe didn't work exactly right. Fallout 4 has some of the fucking best. The intro I think is fantastic. I think the little switcheroo they do there is really good. It has like Diamond City, I think, is inspired. It's all, I think you just get that thing for free in games like this, in New Vegas, in Fallout 3, and in Fallout 4. So in the Fallout games especially, where you are taking something that is established and you flipping it on its head. And usually that is human shit, the media properties, and villages and cities that you already know about, like culture that you already understand. And you can kind of do that in the fantasy stuff a little bit as well. You can mirror society, I guess, and maybe you can in sci-fi. But for some reason, sometimes sci-fi has a harder, like unless you go full like fucking Space Quest or something, or you go full, something just comedy. It's hard. Maybe it's harder tonally to find that self-serious but camp jokey kind of, because even the Outer Worlds is a little bit overly Firefly to me. Maybe
agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I like a lot of it. So so whenever the weird stuff happens, I'm like, oh, I would just wish there was a little bit more of that. Like some of these little classic quests. I feel like I haven't had the one or two quests that I want to talk to somebody about around a water cooler.
Yeah, the kind of moment that comes to mind is when you get to a place where there's like in Neon, it's the only city where hallucinogens are legal, a specific hallucinogen. So it's the Amsterdam.
Is it a fish or something? What's the deal?
It's a drug called Aurora. It's a hallucinogen that's like a volatile oil harvested from a fish.
And did you see the guy who's making a drink out of it?
No, I did not see that.
Yeah, he's making like an energy drink out of Aurora.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
My favorite part is there's a club in Neon where people are like doing Aurora, the psychedelic drug, and there
It's
are
like the only place you can buy it legally or something is in
exactly.
that club, I think. Yeah.
So there are these 3 dancers in the middle on a platform, and if you go up to them, they're like, "You should try Aurora. Like, just let loose, man." And I was like, "Oh, this rocks!" So I instantly went to the bar and bought some Aurora, and I was like, "I'm gonna do this on the platform with the dancers. Like, I want to be one of the dancers." And I was like, it was an opportunity for this really interesting number. Okay. Also, this is a total sidecar. We could do a whole episode about like psychedelics and drugs in video games, and in fact, I think that would be an interesting like doc or something to do someday, or video essay. Yeah.
Skooma.
But yeah, exactly. But I feel like this is kind of a summative moment of the lack of weird in Starfield, is that I went up on the platform and all of the dancers were just like, hey, kind of like repeating their same little canned lines about like, just let loose, do some drugs. And I did the drug, and it was like it slows time by 40% for 10 seconds, and it kind of does like a filter where everything looks hypersaturated, and that was it. And then it was over, and it said you're addicted to whatever.
Does it say you're addicted?
Yeah. After the first time, not even once, kids.
Fuck, it's like
Aurora.
heroin. Okay, yeah.
And I just was like, I don't know what I would have wanted out of that moment. I just thought that the moments that, like you're saying, the weird stuff, like the moments where there are side quests are the moments that make sense, where it's like, oh, there's like, a turret's gone rogue outside the city and someone needs to break the turret. You're like, I'll go shoot that. But I like, why don't I like blast a line of Aurora up my nose and then I'm like on a vision quest and all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like,
I feel like that happened in games like Oblivion, where like you would accidentally get trapped in someone's head or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a fucking wizard's head, or like definitely in Fallout 3. Oh, fuck. Or do you remember in Fallout, was it Fallout New Vegas? No, was it 4? There's one where I think it's 4, where there's like a matrix. There's like this one town where everyone lives in a computer. Frank's nodding his head. Is that Fallout 4?
I think that's Fallout 3. You go in.
Is that 3? And the fucking kid who's killing everyone over and over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're in like a sort of a 50s sitcom version, but like all of these people live in this matrix land, and it's where they're supposed to live because the world has gone to shit. But it just so happens that one of the people in there has decided to spawn in as a small child, and every day terrorizes them all by murdering everyone in the village.
That's unbelievable. And it's that like, I don't know. My personal like one line take on it is that people in big game studios should probably do more drugs. But I don't know, man. I was like the moments where there were opportunities for weird things to happen that would then lead to more kind of like chasing down the weird. I just felt like the scenario design wasn't there. It felt like all of the scenario design was focused on more ordinary situations. And I kept thinking about the phrase scenario design. So like if you watch old movies, instead of saying screenwriter or writer, oftentimes it'll say scenario by so-and-so.
Okay.
And that kept occurring to me because I feel like a lot of storytelling in media, in film and television and games is about scenario crafting. It's not just about, because when people think writing, they often think here's the outline of the story and dialogue. And I think a lot of writing is actually crafting interesting scenarios. It's not just coming up with like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you were in this place and there was this type of a person? It's then about taking those elements and like teasing out the interesting interactions that could happen, the like interesting veiling of information. It's like Hitchcock talks a lot about this. Hitchcock talks
Sounds
about
like Twilight Zone or something, kind of.
Yeah, like that's a good example of having like all of Twilight Zone episodes are kind of these bottle narratives because they all have to happen in these kind of confined spaces. So it's just about like maximizing the intensity or intrigue of that bottled situation.
Yeah.
And so like Hitchcock talks a lot about this where, there's a group of people sitting at a table and they're talking over dinner or whatever, and that's boring. But then if you have this exact same scene, but the first shot of it is the camera goes onto the table and there's a bomb, then it transforms the entire scenario. It's the exact same scenario. It's just people sitting at a table having dinner, but it is elevated because of context, because of the order of information and how the information is presented. And I kept feeling like Starfield was a bunch of kind of like 7 to 8 out of 10 storytelling that
Yeah.
there was never like a character who was like, this is the guy. And in fact, there was one character who is a companion who got captured by people at some point, and they kind of did a joke out of how charming he was because his captors ended up really liking him by the time I freed him. And then when I was traveling with him, I couldn't fucking stand him. I was like,
He's the guy I'm stuck with at the moment that I hope isn't a real bug. So
I was like, I don't understand how you charmed anyone. I can't just like get away from me, dude. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of kind of like there's a lot of potential in a lot of these scenarios. There's a lot of things that on paper sound really interesting, and then the way that they play out is kind of the most ordinary version possible.
It's wild because I'm like, in many ways, some of these older games had a lot of like, I don't like the word bug. It just gets used so fucking way too broadly, and so does jank. I guess maybe it's because it's kind of this ill-defined, fucking human interaction thing that we just, or like systems interaction thing that we just can't put our finger on what it is. But like those games were a little bit rough around the edges in many different ways, in the way shooting happened, or in the way this happened or that happened. But it was always kind of worth it because the stories were great.
Yeah.
And like, that's why games like Fallout 3, you couldn't wait to open the next vault. You couldn't wait to see the Elvis people or whatever it is. And in a weird way, Starfield has fixed a lot of the stuff that people complained about for years. The shooting's great. It's, for a game that is this dynamic, it is basically bug free in my experience, and seems like everyone else's. Like, and it's different from a Call of Duty where it's like a fucking roller coaster. Like, these games have a lot of different logic going on. They've so many different systems, and it's a miracle these games run it. I was always so forgiving of all these games because they are these dynamic games, and like, we don't complain about bugs in Dwarf Fortress because the game is like so insanely complex. So like, of course, that's what you get. Sometimes the fucking, sometimes the soup has lumps in it. Like, that's just part of putting in all these ingredients. And in a weird way, Starfield has like fixed, it's rounded off it's fixed all that shit. It's a great product. It works good. There's lots of things. I even think like things like the crafting and the base building, you can totally avoid that shit. Whereas in Fallout 4, you couldn't. You had to do a lot of that stuff. There's a part in this in the story where they're like, oh, you have this thing you can use now. Do you want to store it in your ship or at your base? And you're like, oh, well, I don't really do bases, so ship. And they're like, sure. And you can totally see that that's like, we're trying to get out of your way. Like, play this game you want yourself. But the thing that's missing now is that fucking the heart or the soul or something. And it's like, and even the central mystery of the game. And again, I think we've done an awesome job of basically doing this spoiler free for an hour and 5 minutes. I want to continue that. The central mystery of the game that has been alluded to in the trailers and stuff, that there is like this things you're finding that have some sort of power. Those powers and that thing is completely aweless to me.
Yeah.
Like, there's no awe. There's no reverence. There's no, in a way that like even No Man's Sky, when you would like stumble upon whatever they did, they'd stumble upon these arcs and you do this thing, and it had this like godly feeling to it or something. Whereas when it happens in this, and sometimes you even get like rewards as a result of it, so far, at least to me, it feels very mechanical. Although that might be thematically what they're going for, because there is a whole conversation you're having with people that it's like, is this God? Is this just another faction with slightly better technology than we have? Is this blah, blah, blah? We don't know what it is. But I do feel like the wonder's not there. Also, the music doesn't give me the wonder either.
Yeah, the music does feel very, it sounds like The Outer Worlds. It's kind of that, like Flash Gordon meets Interstellar, kind of like, I don't know, like kind of crescendoing, but muted orchestral, but I don't know. It's kind of exactly what you'd expect.
Some of it's cool.
Yeah.
But none of it's like warming my cockles like some of the,
the core quest design being kind of aweless and like having no sense of the sublime is kind of exactly what I'm alluding to with the scenario design thing, because on paper, going around the universe and finding relics from some sort of like big mystery, that's unbelievable. Like, that's so cool on paper, and then what it actually feels like to do that is kind of like nothing. It just feels like and
especially the way you do the end part where you're floating around the cave thing.
Oh,
and
God.
That is the most fucking like, Jesus.
It's joyless. I just felt nothing. And there was like a cool cutscene where it's like, oh, okay, maybe this is going, and then it just ended and it was kind of nothing. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they could have squeezed a little bit more more juice out of that, or made it feel there. The other problem,
Maybe it gets there.
I hope it does.
we're
I
early.
sincerely hope it does. The other thing is that when characters ask you questions about how you feel around the central mystery, the game is very open about how it lets you role play. When they're like, "What did it feel like when this happened to you?" And you can be like, "It felt like I was full of electricity. It felt like nothing. It wasn't a big deal." Like all of these different things. But because I am not that person, I don't know how it felt, and so it's kind of it was kind of a non-role play. It was kind of like an empty version of role playing because
That's a good
essentially
point.
they're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
asking me to make it up. And I'm like, I don't fucking know. I'm not the writer. Like I felt like that was a moment for authorship, not for role playing. And
You're right.
You know, they were just like,
Yeah.
they're like, what did it feel like? And I'm like, you tell me, dude. I wasn't there. Like I'm fucking watching this on a screen.
It's wild. Let's go to some questions.
Yeah.
Just for a hot second, just in case, because I feel like we've covered quite a lot. It sounds like Frank, I feel like me and Jeremy talked a lot there at the end. Are you feeling somewhat, like, how are you feeling in relation to that? Like the idea that, like, I'm really enjoying playing this game. Obviously, I played 36 hours of it in like basically 6 days or whatever. I'm going to continue to play it. I've had some really fantastic moments. I think shooting's fantastic. I'm enjoying exploring the worlds, all that sort of stuff. But it's definitely missing, like, to quote one of the missions I did at my favorite restaurant in the galaxy, Chunks, which is a restaurant where they sell squares of everything, squares of food. There's a mission where you had to go find their special sauce for a guy who's on a Chunks outpost in the middle of the fucking nowhere. It was absolutely hilarious. I did that with my daughter. She was laughing her head off. She was like, "What chunk do you want to buy?" My daughter was for breakfast this morning in real life.
That's
She
so
was saying to me.
cute. That's really cute.
But I forget where I was going with that. The special sauce. I feel like it's missing just a little bit of je ne sais quoi. I don't know what it is. What do you think, Frank? Do you care about that sort of stuff? Are you just enjoying it for what it is?
It's funny. I enjoy the game for its like mechanics. Like I really love the dogfighting stuff because now it's highlighting. I gotta upgrade my ship. All right, but I've only out of maybe I did one quest that was really fun where. A random planet. I think I was going to this this system to do a story quest or something, and then it was like, oh, I have a distress call. This person on this separate planet needs help. You touch down. He's like, hey, I'm a community of farmers here. Our satellite systems have been knocked out by these pirates. Can you go hunt down the pirates?
Oh, cool.
So
I've
then
not
it was
seen
a
this.
dogfighting mission where I had to go to like 5 different planets, like exteriors, and do all these. Fight all these ships, and it was like, oh, this is really fun. And one thing that's kind of cool is when you blow up a ship, you can just loot all their stuff. It's like maybe 2 drops. But then that's how my ship inventory got filled so fast. But it was like, oh, and the way the ship stuff works is fascinating. Is like you have a certain amount of power, and you can designate however many power cells to either your like offense, your ballistics, your lasers, and your missiles, or your mobility, your like engine, your grav shift, and your shield. So when I'm not in combat, I maximize my mobility. When I'm in combat, I turn off my engine. I turn off my
Turn it off.
I turn
Oh,
off
no.
my gravity. I just have my shield. I'll have like 1 tick for my engine, and I slowly move around and just boom, 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 boom. I loot them. Boom, 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 boom. And you can heal every time you blow up a ship. You can grab their ship parts to heal yourself, so you can kind of heal your ship as you're fighting.
Whoa. You could heal your fucking ship?
Yes.
Yeah.
When the hole goes away, that you click
Motherfuckers.
right R3, whatever, right stick, whatever, and it heals it. And
Is
so
that with the ship parts?
that's
Yes.
because the ship parts were driving me crazy.
God, I had these dogfights where like 3 of them would fucking spawn in and I'd shoot them, and I've warmed to the dogfighting, and you know, and that whole system they use, that's the same as like Elite Dangerous, a couple of other. That's kind of the power bar thing is kind of similar in some other games. But I killed them all, and then fucking 3 more would warp in, and I killed them, and I'm like fuck, and then 2 more would warp in. I was like, I've got like fucking 3 hull. Like I'm just like save scumming trying to get through it. Okay, thank you. I know.
So that's what drove me crazy at first, was my cargo hold was full because every ship part is like 10, whatever their system they use. And now I'm like, oh, just use those like med packs, just abuse them, because every ship you kill, you get it back. So that kind of clicked for me. And then I finally, I'm starting to do mission for this set of factions, and it's like they have different ship parts. So I upgraded that stuff, so I'll do better. I'm starting to spec into that because I really like it.
That's cool.
It's also the kind of thing where it's like the skill trees I love, where everything looks good, and this has been confirmed, but this game does have a new game plus, so it's like, oh, will you eventually be able to max level your character? Because everything looks really cool in this game, and
there's a lot of perks. There's like, what have you guys been specking into? What have you been specking into, Frank?
I think I've done like almost everything on the front row, but I've avoided all the weapon perks because I feel like I'm having no issues with combat. Like, and if anything, like I don't mind like I don't need to make combat easier, but everything else,
Yeah.
like the persuasion mini game is pretty cool. It almost feels
I like it.
It's really good.
It feels like playing like, I don't know, like Lost Judgment or Ace Attorney or something, where it's like you can say some of the right things to tip them over, or you can say the wrong thing to instant fail it. And I've kind of save scrummed it the first time to learn it, and then the second time I met someone who did it, I don't know if I've played anything like it. Maybe Disco's a little the same. You're kind of rolling for it. It's cool. I really like that. So so I did a little bit of that. Inventory space.
Nice.
Put 2 points in inventory space and oxygen, health.
Did you get a
cargo.
ship or you can get like suits that give you more inventory space too?
I haven't.
I think it's anything that's got mechanized written in its name
Okay.
has extra inventory.
The one thing that's been really fun, and this is probably such a rare chance where it's like, it's been kind of fun playing this game earnestly without looking stuff up, because every time I play these games, like, there's a choice here. What should I do for this mission? Oh, just make a choice and be confident in it. And I haven't felt stuck except for the time where it's like, do you want to make an outpost and scan these materials? And I'm like, I'm good. I don't want to. I don't want to do this.
I did the perk I chose was for the house that you have.
Okay.
You have a big mortgage. You've got like 120,000 or whatever thing, which seemed like a lot, but I've got like 400 grand in the bank right now.
Damn.
Yeah, and I was saving up to buy like the biggest ship, but then I realized I had to put points into piloting.
Yep.
Because I wasn't able to do anything. It was a Class C ship. It was fucking massive. It was on one of the planets they're selling it. And so that's one of the things about the perks is that you can't just upgrade. Once you get one of the perks, to upgrade within the perks, so every perk, or I guess I should call these, are these perks?
So yeah, there's skill trees. Perks are like your 2 to 3 starting.
Yeah, so I guess skills.
Yeah.
So the skills, you can upgrade the skills within them, but you can't just do that automatically. You have to complete like a small subtask to do it. So, if you get like the first time, I'm going to upgrade my pistols. Great. Pistols do 10% more damage now. Then you have to kill 20 people with pistols and then to unlock the ability to spend the point to make it 25%. So that's what I'm trying to do with my ship now, because I'm like, oh fuck, I need to get better at piloting. The unlocking minigame is fucking brilliant.
I'm so bad at it. I don't know why.
You'll get it.
Okay.
Once you get you'll start looking at the deeper layers at the start.
Yeah.
And planning those out. So you have like it's like a match thing where there's like circles and you have to match where these little digits go on it, but you only have a certain amount of them, and you can get down to the bottom layer and then not have the right ones left. And it's like a nightmare. I fucking love it. I don't know why. I'm just like addicted. I have like masterful lockpicking now. My lockpicking game is insane. That and pickpocketing is just the most fun. I do a lot of safe scum pickpocketing.
Yeah.
Just like, and also I have a suit. I have the best suit ever. I have the chameleon armor. So it makes me 100% invisible if I'm not moving.
Oh, wow.
So I just fucking walk into a room behind this executive, walk behind him, crouch, and I fucking disappear. And he's like, oh, guess that person went away. Pickpocket. So I can just pickpocket fucking anyone. So I've had instances where there's like the CEO guy who runs Neon was walking down the fucking street, and I basically stopped somewhere and went invisible, and he walked past and I pickpocketed him.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
It was so good.
That's fantastic. I haven't done much of that. So I did want to address the ship stuff. I didn't want to cut you off, but I kind of feel like, did you guys play like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter back in the day? Any of those games?
No, only ones I played are like modern ones.
Okay, cool. I feel like Elite Dangerous might be similar. I kind of wished the ship combat was a little more, I don't know if hands-on is the right word. You kind of
deeper.
Yeah, okay. So I really like the ship customization stuff. It's almost like it's like an Armored Core Light, where you can switch out components on like a ton of different systems on your ship, and it changes the way your ship looks and functions and all these things. And there's like different types of weapons. You have weapon slots, and they can be like pulse laser or missile or ballistics and all these. Like that stuff is really cool. The thing where I was kind of wanting a little bit more is in those old X-Wing versus TIE Fighter games and like dogfighting games in space like that, it's this very frenetic, fast-paced, like it feels like dogfighting. You're like zipping around and everyone's zipping around, and as people fly by you, you have a similar thing where it's like a chyron on the edge that shows you which direction to turn to see people. And you like track them down, and you kind of have to like pull the joystick or mouse to follow them and track and kind of lead your shots a little bit. And it's about like it's about dodging incoming fire while also going super fast and kind of lining up these shots and leading your shots and like unloading a bunch of lasers that will kind of lead your shot perfectly into that. And in this, you kind of just put your big circle over an enemy and then just smash the trigger as much as possible until until your guns are empty. I felt like a little disengaged by that.
Again, I don't want to keep saying it's early stuff, but I had a lot of enemies doing the I'm going to go really far away and then charge you thing. So you're just like basically just like fucking hitting all the buttons as they're coming right towards you. As I've gotten further into the game, it's been more multiple people around me swooping around.
Yeah, I've had some dogfights like that, but it still is just putting your big circle over them, and then it does the targeting for you within that big circle. You know what I mean? Like you kind of just point your ship at them and you don't aim. And that kind of
it like auto aims to the circle thing.
It auto aims as long as they're basically like within the middle kind of 70% of your field of view. You don't have to aim at all.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it didn't make me feel like a dogfighting.
Does it do it on PC too?
Yeah.
You're playing on PC, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. I for some reason I thought that's probably they're just doing it on console, but there you go.
Yeah. No, I wanted to be like lining up my shots and feel the space combat felt kind of like it felt a little slower than I wanted it to, and it felt a little more hands off than I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder did they pull back on the difficulty because they're like, if some normies play this game and then they get to that part and they're like, what the fuck? I wonder.
It is easy to die in space combat. Yeah, so I can see that. Like that's kind of the thing. I eventually towards the end of my play session just last night was like, can I go to a level 70 solar system and just do whatever I want? Because like I said earlier, like I walk around like the Terminator with a shotgun and I just end people's lives. Like the combat is so fun, but getting really good guns kind of trivialized it a little bit for me. So I was like,
it's gonna get harder.
Okay,
don't worry.
Good. Yeah, so I wanted to just go like to skill check myself and just fight some really hard dudes. And the reason I couldn't get there is because en route I ran into some like level 20 pirates and the space combat was the thing that I was not as adept at, and they just decimated me.
If your ship's not good enough, you're basically shagged at that stage. So that's how they do it. I like how they do the leveling in this actually, because there are some like absolute they solve sort of the two problems, I think, for me at least, is that I like World of Warcraft style leveling where there are places where I'll just have to get better to be able to kill these guys over here. The thing that I like is that any of the quests that are like, you remember when you play WoW, or I guess like you play like Fallout 3 and then you have a bunch of like level 5 quests and they're just like super easy to do because you're killing easy things and then they give you no money or XP. They seem to scale up the earlier levels to where it's not trivial in terms of the combat, but also you get basically the sort of like median of what you would get at this level. Like I was doing quests that I got right at the start, and now I'm getting like 5,000 credits for them, which I'm like pretty sure they were not going to give you 5,000 credits 4 hours into this game because it was like insane amount of money. So I think they've like done that, which is good at least. So I have quests that I didn't get around to doing, and now I'm like level 26, but it's actually still good to go back. It's worthwhile to go back and do them.
Cool.
Because you actually do get a bit of scratch for them.
That's good design, yeah, because then otherwise your quest log just fills up with nonsense of like, remember when that guy wanted a sandwich like 35 hours ago?
Right. We'll get to the questions. I have one more question for everyone before we do that. Performance. How has it looked and played? For you, Frank, first of all, you're playing on Xbox Series X, right?
Yeah, I'm playing on Series X. When you're talking to NPCs, walking around cities, it doesn't really affect it. It's only at 30 frames per second, but I think the animation and fidelity is great that it doesn't bother me.
Feel 30 frames a second. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, and I have the default. I left the default graphics are like motion blur and whatever. Normally I turn that off, but I think the motion blur does help.
It works. Yeah.
I have noticed when I'm like exterior on a planet and there was like one case there were like 20 little bugs running towards me and I was jumping up and boosters like, oh, it dipped a little bit of frame rate. Other than that, like most of the combat is inside like caves or not dungeon. What are their equivalent of dungeon space stations? It holds 30. It's fine. But yeah, because of the motion blur, it seems like it runs better. I haven't seen it in action at 60 frames on PC or more. I'm sure once I do that, it'll have that effect where I'm like, shoot. But I'm happy playing on Series X. I'm enjoying it. When I heard the news, I saw that tweet like months ago. I was like, oh, that's a bummer. That sucks.
Me too.
But now, once you see it in action, I'm like, oh, this is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been pretty seamless. I'm playing on PC. I'm playing on my edit PC that we built for the NoClip office in like 2019, and I
think it's got a 1060. Is that right? It's got one of the first RTX cards. So
I think it has a
like a
2060 maybe.
2060. Yeah, 2060. Right?
Check,
is that right?
But yeah. But
it's like a 3.5-year-old graphics card.
Yeah. And it has not hiccuped. I've got everything on high. The only two things I have on my C drive are this and Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
Because it's like completely. I mean, that's like 350 gigs. So I tried to run it off of my secondary drive, and this game would not run. Because it had to communicate through the C drive, and it was just like it was not working. So I had to reinstall it on my C drive. It works fine. I haven't had a problem with anything. It hasn't slowed down. It hasn't crashed. Nothing.
Cool.
Yeah. I even was running like I was just doing a bunch of space travel and exploring and stuff, and I was like running videos in the background and listening to music and stuff, and like nothing was breaking.
Nice, yeah. I've played on both. It definitely looks way better on PC.
Yeah.
But I was surprised how I was totally fine with it at home. It's such a couch controller game for me as well. That like I like just playing these games and spending, fucking 5 hours. Like I had when I got back from Mexico, I was working. And then for the first 2 days, and then I had to cancel that trip to Europe. And so on the Wednesday, I like took the first like day off in months where I just stayed at home and played games all day. And I just played Starfield all day and in my pajamas on the couch, and it was fucking great. And it does like. I remember I always talk about playing The Witcher on Xbox at 30 frames a second, and I noticed it every single second of that game. And then I played it the second time on PC on like 60, and it was so much better. And I don't know what it is. It must be like you said, Frank, the motion blur or something. But this game does not feel like a 30 frames per second game to me. It clearly is, but it feels smooth. Like the movement and the camera movement and everything works within that 30 frames a second. And when I play on PC, it feels sharp and cool and good, but like I enjoy shooting on both. I enjoy looking at both. Like when I went to Neon, I was like, oh, I gotta see what this looks like on PC. And then when I came into work, I played like 10 minutes to see what it looked like, and I was like, oh, it looks really good. But I go back to the other one, and I don't think it looks like shit. Like it, the lighting's not as good, and it's not as sharp, but just the design of it's really, like, clothes look great in this game. Like the designs of the cities are interesting. There's a lot of detail. The inside of the spaceships, especially, like they've baked all that lighting, but it looks super nice. It looks like Alien. It's very like that sort of white, super light gray leather kind of feel to everything. It's super slick. So yeah. No problems on our front. Frank, let's get through these emails. Or questions. Let's rapid fire some of these.
Yeah, so this is on Twitter. We'll go through these. Gavino Heat says, does Starfield have the classic Bethesda launch problems?
I would assume that's like bugs and performance issues. No, I would say no. I mean, there was a headline that was front page on Reddit recently that this was like their least buggy.
Tyler McVicker broke embargo on his Discord.
Really?
Is what happened. Yeah. That's what the quote was from. Was talking about how he didn't have a bug for 15 hours on his Discord, and one of his Discord community sold him out.
Jesus Christ.
That's what it was.
Well, that notwithstanding, he is correct. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had any problems at all.
Yeah, I think that the Bethesda launch problem thing gets totally blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
The worst buggy game of all these was Obsidian's. Was Fallout New Vegas, which was a fucking nightmare. Had genuine problems with save bugs and everything. These games are just fucking weird emergent things. Like I don't remember having any problem when I played Oblivion on launch. Like I don't remember Skyrim being fucked. I remember enjoying Skyrim.
I also feel like people, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of it's reasonable for people who pay $70 for a video game to expect that the video game works, but I do feel like there is a hyper focus on bugs in a way that may actively harm games a little bit.
Games 100%.
Because
100%.
Yeah, because I think that like I think the fallout of that a lot of, no pun intended, Bethesda, is that within a studio's walls, they're taking that feedback and being like, millions of people were angry that this was buggy. We need to the only way to reduce the odds of that happening is to scope down and do less ambitious, less experimental things. And I think that hurts people who want cool, ambitious, weird games.
Yeah.
I would rather have a fucking broken ass game that's so weird and interesting than a game that like never crashes and never has. I mean, obviously there's a midpoint to this. If the game doesn't run at all, there's diminishing returns on how weird
and
it
it's
is.
different if it's a linear fucking first person shooter game that's buggy, or it's this type of like, ImSim or super dynamic world or simulation game, like, you know what I mean? Like some of the times it's a bit much.
Yeah.
But yes. Thanks for your question.
It's a good question.
Killian asks, has there been a moment in the game that genuinely surprised you?
I think I mentioned one or two.
Yeah.
But probably not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there again, these are the things that I don't want to specifically explain what happened, because I think there are so few and far between that I want other people to have those.
Amen.
But yeah, there's been a handful. I would say, yeah, not enough is the. I feel like most of the things that have happened have been very predictable and expected and kind of just like serviceable storytelling. So I would want more.
Sinisphere asks, will the game let me be an absolute prick if I want to? Pirate, smuggler, outlaw, whole works, both in terms of gameplay and story. Bethesda has only really shown off good/neutral flavored followers. I'm looking to avoid another Fallout 4 lawful good railroad.
Yeah, I would say that's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't know yet. Right now I would say no. I haven't gone full heel yet, but the moments where I have, I've run into a lot of, oh, you shot that person, they're on all fours. Like, they'll be okay. You can't kill that person. Sorry. That's not okay. And then like, oh, you shot a bunch of people, you have to go pay a fine. Like, if you get caught, you go to jail. You end up being in jail for different periods of time. And I think there is an XP cost to that. So you lose XP while you're in prison. You'd also have all your like, stolen goods confiscated, and you'll pay a fine. So there's definitely that. But also I went and committed some crimes because I had this like, I had a dark brotherhood feeling in my head where I was like, I'm being too nice. I need to do some bad things, and maybe that will open some doors. And then that's when that quest opened up that we both talked about. So I don't know though. None of the companions are bastards yet. Although I wonder, I think I have to talk to the fan. I think the fan might have a quest I've not done yet.
The feeling I get is that me being a piece of shit led to an interesting side quest, but I don't think it's going to allow, like, obviously this is a game about going around the universe and getting relics. I don't think that this is a game that will accommodate you being like, fuck this organization I'm working with, I'm gonna like get all the artifacts for me. And there may be a moment where it opens up for that later on, but it has not telegraphed at all. It basically feels like if you stray from the path and become like a deviant psychopath, essentially the game slaps you on the wrist and everyone is kind of like, you're a weird dick, let's keep finding the relics. Yeah.
Sandwich Jones asks, can you do a backflip in it?
No, movement is pretty much like what you'd expect. You can do double jumps. The gravity on some planets is lower than others, so you can kind of, those are nice because those, you end up saving a lot of sprint energy because you can just like jetpack your way back to your ship. I had one instance where I was in a pool. Where was I? I was on Titan, so one of Saturn's moons, I think, and they had this weird little outpost where people. It was actually really cool. They had like this thing where almost like Rumspringa, where like the kids who were born on the moon or on this place would go on something called their, what did they call it? Like their work year or something, where they would choose somewhere else in the solar system to go for the year to try and get it out of their system or whatever, or see if they come back. And I just got that just from going around talking to people. There was no quest there. It was very, maybe there is at some point, but it was very interesting. But they had a bar in there, and I went in, and my daughter was sitting on my lap, and she was like, play pool. And there was a pool thing there. And you can't like play pool, but like Duke Nukem, you can pick up things in this game by holding A. So I picked up the snooker cue, and I hit the cue ball, but I hit it too hard, and because the gravity was low, the ball like chipped into the hole, which I thought was like a very like, oh, that's cool. Like there's moments like that where you're like, oh, that's interesting. But no, in terms of movement, it's pretty much It's like it's a Bethesda game.
Yeah,
There's no-
I actually wished that there were a few moments during firefights where I wished that I could like run and slide around a corner, kind of like Apex. Yeah, it is pretty, it is a little stiff and rigid, which makes sense. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that in like a big heavy spacesuit anyway. It was just like I've played too much Apex Legends.
One thing I still have to see in terms of the dog fighting is like in Star Fox 64 or whatever, Star Fox, you can do like the barrel roll, you can do like the quick turn, and it's and it's like I don't think there's any of that.
So I wouldn't say that because have you upgraded your pilot skill yet? Because on the first one you upgrade, you get thrusters. Yeah. And that does let you pivot. So I don't know if the latter ones give you other things.
Okay.
They might.
Okay,
I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds right. Because on the space tech tree, or whatever, there's so many options I haven't explored.
There's a lot.
Yeah, so that would make sense if it's as slow it's rigid and then it gets looser. But that's one thing that would be very cool.
Yeah.
And then S Martin 115 asks, the game shows a lot of promise, but in the showcase, I could see how there's room for it to quickly run up against boundaries of its own systems for how expensive it aims to be. Are 990 of the 1,000 planets more or less Preston Garvey another settlement missions?
I would say so. Preston Garvey was one of your character's buddies, your buddies in Fallout 4, and with the outposts, there was a lot of like copy and paste missions there. I think the game does a pretty good job. I will say, like, I don't feel completely like it's not like there are billions of galaxies to visit right now. I assume you're only on the Milky Way, but in terms of solar systems, like, I don't know how many I've unlocked really, because you don't get a good sense of it because you're just bouncing around this map all the time. Maybe 20 or so, but like on each one, I feel like every planet has. A lot of them are just like gas giants, so you can't land on them. Ice giants, you can't land on them. So only the like ones that are made of some sort of rock you're able to actually go down on. And most of them are, if you want to get a certain mineral, you can go down there, but like otherwise there's no point in going down. So it feels like the stuff that's relevant pops up. So I don't feel like the world is full of copy paste. Except when you go down to a planet's surface, I guess, and all you're doing is scanning shit. And it's like clearly then it's like, just generating as you're walking around. Like that happens. But we've done a lot of sort of criticizing that the missions are a bit, not the stories for a lot of them aren't amazing. And the actions are generally shooting things, bringing something from A to B or collecting things. But the one thing I haven't experienced is some sort of cookie cutter style thing to the mission. Every mission has felt relatively bespoke or like appropriately bespoke. You know what I mean? Like if you're just bringing something from A to B, you're just bringing it. Like there's no fanfare around it. It doesn't matter. If you're killing 5 of these things, they don't have to dress it up. So I don't know. What do you think, Jeremy?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say my problem with the mission design was never that I felt like I was doing the same 3 missions over and over. It just felt like there was a lot of variety. It just felt like the variety within that was not, it wasn't. I would say if it was cookie cutter missions, it could have been like 5 or 6 out of 10. They were all very unique, but not like transcendently cool or interesting. So it was engaging enough. I just feel like there could have been some polish within those confines, but definitely not samey. Unique feeling things. And like different. Like I said earlier, there was missions where all I was doing was going around and like persuading people and like examining the security of like a certain place to set up for a meeting that would happen there later. So it feels. I feel like the variety is pretty good actually.
And then Bitcoin Support B asks, is there a classic sci-fi type enemy akin to the Xenomorph or the Flood from Halo? Like an enemy that's just taken over planets or whatnot?
I don't want to get into too much detail on this. But in general, I will say like not really. Like there's no like it's not that. Well, who knows? I feel like I've completed the first chapter of the game and I'm almost 40 hours in, so who fucking knows. But no, like that's actually a good point. I feel like the animals that are on the planets are interesting looking and weird looking in a way that's kind of cool, but it's not Mass Effect. Everyone's human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think it's interesting seeing culturally where people ended up, because there's definitely like accents and appearances that are Earth-ish. It's only like 300. What is it? Is it 1,000 years in the future? 300 years in the future or something like that?
2,500?
It's something like that.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. So it's So people have Irish surnames and they have weird Irish accents, but I'm like, I guess it's like 300 years in the future. Of course they have fucking weird accents. Like everyone's going to sound weird. So no, it's not, which I think is good. It doesn't feel like, Star Trek or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or Mass Effect.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is kind of branching off of what you said rather than off of the question. But I do kind of wish, like in terms of theming the different areas, like we talked about earlier, it does feel like they could have done kind of like a vault style thing, where like if a planet was kind of like cut off, like if you were visiting a planet that had been cut off by some sort of like cosmic event, that like cosmic rays were too strong to get to it, and then you got there and they had like a really bizarre culture because they'd been cut off for a while, I think that would have been more interesting. But because travel is so easy in this world, everything kind of feels like you're just going from like Cleveland to New York.
But again, the further out you get,
true.
Maybe that's the case.
I hope so. I hope so. I just feel like here's the thing: is like I've played 12 hours of this video game, and it's slow burn or not. Slow burn is fine, but I do feel like if you're drawing a chart of the intensity of novelty that I want from an experience like this, I think it's got to punch really hard and really early and earn the slow burn. And if you punch hard and early, if you show me that like down the road I'm gonna see some insane nonsense, I'll ride or die. Like I'll go all the way, baby. But like you got to telegraph that it's coming late. You can't just be like, oh, it's gonna get crazy, because it's like, well, like it's like when people tell you like, oh, if you get through the first season of The Wire, it's like it's gonna get it's like that works for The Wire, but it doesn't work for everything. You know what I mean?
No, I think you're 100% right, like that, and that's very fair, I think, as well. And it's I've definitely been playing this game wanting to like it that bit more than I do, and I really like it. But yeah, and then every once in a while, I'm like optimistic, I think is how I'm playing it.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while, I come across something like a glimmer of it, and I'm like, yes, more of that. Like something you just mentioned there, not that exact scenario, but something kind of like that a little bit has happened to me. And that was one of the more interesting missions. And it's kind of recurring as well. So I'm hoping that that's the case, but you're right, and I think that's funny, because I think somebody could come to this and have played the exact same amount of hours that we have and be, oh, this game is not for me, it's uninteresting and boring and blah 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 blah, and you're gonna have people who play this and go, oh, this just totally hits my beats. Like it's not a quality issue in some ways. I think like it's tough. Like I just the one thing I really wish is similar to you, I think, is that I wish there was a bit more super interesting writing, and maybe hopefully it gets there. But right now it's not. Right now it's like it's a 9 out of 10 game with 7 out of 10 missions or something like that.
Yeah, the one, like, I guess, criticism as I've explored, it's like you're on all these planets, but there's still humans. It would be cool if it was more alien, just seeing sort of alien planets. But again, who knows what's out there in space?
Like alien, like who talk?
Yeah,
speaking?
I don't know. People with like 14 eyes or tentacles for.
I'm glad it doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel kind of split on that. I don't know how I'd feel either way. I guess like either one could be interesting in its own way. I don't.
Maybe we find them. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so. I don't feel like it needs that, but I feel like it could be interesting if they did that.
That would be the hit, because if you spent like 200 hours of this game surrounded by humans, and then eventually this 4-eyed fucker turns up and you're like, what? Like that would be dope.
Yeah, because I feel like within Fallout there's factions of ghouls or giant mutated beasts. In Oblivion there's like elves and orcs and goblins, and it's like, but yeah,
all that's in this is fucking. What's the weirdest person I can say without being racist? I guess the robots are funny.
Yeah,
the robots are a bit
pretty
but there's
funny.
not even like androids or anything, are there? I haven't seen any like.
No. I have to talk about one character, and it's someone who's featured heavily in the marketing, and I feel like there was a viral post about it the other day, so I feel like I have to.
Who is it?
It's Sam Coe, the cowboy.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
I can't say shit about Sam Coe right now. I'll tell you
okay,
that much.
all right. I hope like maybe he gets interesting later or something. I feel like people were so critical because they were like, I'm so sick of this kind of like very American centric version of space travel where like the space is the Wild West, is a frontier, brother. Like I get that. Like it is a tired trope. I'm fine with the cowboy shit if it's cool cowboy shit. I like Western movies. It's just that Sam Coe is like
so boring.
He's such a non-fucking character.
Oh my god.
He's just like when you have him as a mandatory companion at some point early on, you go up and there's like pirates that you have to fight, and he said the exact same line but like 8 different versions of it where he's like, like smugglers, they're just trying to earn a living too. I'm like, yeah, I know, dude. Like, I fucking know.
Yeah, he come, and I think I 100% I did not like this guy. And what was weird is that everyone else around you speaks about him with such reverie, like he's supposed to be this legend. Yeah. And I just thought he was like, just talk to your fucking dad. Yeah. Like he was being such a little fucking dweeb about his daddy problems. And I was like, I felt like I was babysitting this idiot where I was just like, just fucking apologize to your dad. Like he didn't want you to leave the planet. Just be nice to him. And then I ended up just like bribing his dad for the map because I was like, I just need to be out of this fucking house. Yeah. The two of you are so annoying.
It's insufferable.
Yeah, I'm with
it's
you.
when two people are like talking past each other and you're just like, listen, he's saying this and he's saying this and neither of you are explaining it to each other. Yeah, I don't know. Sam Coe, it's like the cowboy character could have been interesting with grit, but he's just like they talk
Nathan Fillion, sprinkle a little Nathan Fillion in there.
It's just like such a standard, like not even tropey character. I feel like it could have been tropey and it could have been cool if he was like a gruff outlaw or something, and they like Constellation had to work with him because he was like the best at like infiltration or weapons or something. But instead he's just, like at one point there's like just a bit of flavor dialogue where they're like, yeah, Sam, I like gave you this assignment months ago and you still haven't done it, and he's just like, yeah, I'm real sorry about that. I'm like, that's it? That's all you have to say for yourself? Of like, what? Like you could have been like, oh, I was off, like like getting ass. I was like doing like crazy crimes. Like, so just like give me some grit or something. I don't know.
I will say, and again, this I feel like I think we're in a pattern here, right? Where Jeremy makes some very, very salient points, and then fucking 36 hours Danny swans in and says, well,
just give it
actually, a minute. But then the actually that I provide is like not really, it definitely gets better, more of I think it's trending better, but I don't know. Like I'm just such a fucking optimist that like everyone should take everything what I say with a little bit of a pinch of salt, that like I'm always wishing the best to happen, right? I will say that after the act that I've had, I think I'm having there's more at stake with all of my main character constellation people now in a way that is interesting, in a way that it was not interesting for the past. Like they were such a fucking United Colors of Benetton, nice batch of people who were generally all just in it to win it. And now I feel like that's not the case, and I think it's better for it. But I don't know if that was all set up to add a bit to make them as bland as possible, so that then when you went through something with them, they were interesting. I've no idea. But some of them have like changed as characters a little bit. Like it's, but who knows?
I feel a little okay. I feel,
but I hated spending time. with him. And he's not the only one I hated spending time with.
I feel a little bit like what you're saying is, dinner's going to be really good if you don't eat for 2 days. And it's like, well, I know, dude. Like, I'm going to be super fucking hungry by then. But that doesn't mean that, like, dinner doesn't last for, like...
You might not like my soup, but if you just go out and walk in the cold for an hour...
You'll be cold enough to like it. Yeah, I don't know. I hate to contrast it to Baldur's Gate 3 again, but there's a character in Baldur's Gate 3 where there's one character, and I won't even say who it is. You meet them and they're kind of very jokey and aloof and glib, and I was like, I don't really like this dude. And then the second interaction with that person, they're really like dour, and it was such a sharp
you said this on a podcast a couple weeks ago.
Exactly. I just think it's like way more like the quality of storytelling that comes through in that moment like really shines in comparison to Starfield. Because it's like,
I would not play Baldur's Gate 3 at the same time as Starfield. I think that'd be like having like Michelin star lunch and then
McDonald's,
some microwave meal for dinner. And not that Starfield is a microwave meal, but it would in terms of my level
point,
of craftsmanship on the writing.
My point in bringing up that same anecdote again for the second time on the podcast is that I think it illustrates the fact that you can have plant and payoff without having it be on a 30, 40, 50 hour time scale. Like that turn that got me intrigued in that character, the fact that they contained multitudes was done so efficiently and so quickly. It felt like it was respecting my time as the player. And I don't think Starfield is trying to not respect my time as the player. I just think that it was it's sort of like the baseline is inefficient storytelling, and efficient storytelling is going above and beyond and figuring out a way to make those punches happen fast enough without like burning all your fuel at the top.
And you can't, like, the thing that's going to be asked is this what happens when you make a game this big, that you just have, because every quest needs to be written in a day, or half as much time as you'd have, as opposed to a game like Baldur's Gate where you're with the same people in the same scenarios for large parts of it, and then they can go into depth within that because everything's so dynamic in Starfield and it's such a broad thing. Do you just end up, without having a team of 5,000 people like a Ubisoft game or whatever, do you end up having this type of more diluted experience as a result? I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, 2 more questions, Frank. Let's pop through. I added these ones in, but let's get through them.
Road Beef asked, are all non-main story missions pre-written, or are they somehow procedurally generated? Can one make their own missions for NPCs to take on? Can NPCs be hired to help caretake of a base or space station?
I don't know if there's any procedurally generated missions. I don't think there is. I think missions can appear in places. They can be dynamic in when they appear based on, like, if you're just wandering around somewhere, they might spawn a village and then a thing happens there and you won't know that it was spawned there. You'll just have come across it, or interactions with people in space and stuff like that. But no, everything's written, I think, or planned. I don't think... Maybe the caves aren't. Maybe the caves are procedurally generated when you find those little dungeons, but they're also not very interesting, a lot of them. So,
yeah, the outpost stuff, though, is interesting. Once you get more crew than you can bring with you everywhere, you can assign crew members to different things. So some crew members that will have, like, different crew members have different attributes. So they'll say, like, this dude's good with laser rifles, and this dude's good at geology and stuff. And one of them is outpost management. And you can assign crew members, once you build outposts, to, like, manage the outposts and oversee them. I've
not done any of that shit.
I haven't experimented with it. I just saw that it was a possibility because I haven't built any outposts, but I do know you can assign them there. I don't know if that, like, increases productivity or what it really does, but
I didn't set up, like, an outpost, like a place to live, because I had that mortgage thing, but I did set up a mining thing that was sending, like, stuff, and I was getting paid 500 quid a day for it or something.
Nice.
It wasn't very much. I think it's the exact same amount of money I have to send to my parents. So I think they're getting paid off of all the nickel.
Sending all the helium you're mining to them.
Exactly. Last question.
And then Metsman asks, is the procedurally generated content like random mine stations worth exploring? Does it contain generic loot, or have you found some good stuff that kept you exploring for more of these places?
This has been a bit of a whiff for me. I haven't found anything interesting in those spots, and sometimes they felt like weirdly empty or something, like bereft of things.
Yeah.
In a way that even, like, regular missions, when you're gunning down all these people, they're dropping shit everywhere. What about you guys? Have you found anything interesting in those?
What about you, Frank?
I went to one cave and there was like 3 things to loot, and nothing was remarkable. So I was so it made me not want to go into more caves without a quest. And then I went to like 2 different settlements where there was just like 1 or 3 spacemen just there, but it served a utility because it was like they were a trader and they had tons of credits you could sell. They sold like digipacks, health items, resources.
Oh, cool.
So maybe, like, again, like when the Reddit community or whatever is like, oh, this random settler on this planet has this resource. I'm sure there'll be a map and data of that, but yeah, it's kind of like the main cities are worth exploring because you'll walk by and you'll get quests. People come up to you, but yeah, so far just picking a direction on a planet to go to one of those POIs hasn't yielded anything without a quest, but I could be wrong.
I'm waiting for, like, the Gary Vault moment. You know what I mean? And it just has not happened. And I've played 3 times more than some of you. You know what I mean? And that's like, that's a bit worrying.
It feels like the loot in the POIs is more interested in kind of simulating what kind of objects would be in that place if you actually went there. And I think that we talked about this with Baldur's Gate, where, like, the world is very dense and small. And if you looked at it from, like, if you could see the whole map, it wouldn't look like a real place. It would look like a weird, like, board game map. And and I think that there's a decoupling of simulation from good game design sometimes. And I feel like in Elden Ring, there's a camp of a bunch of, like, fire mages mages, and you go and you fight them, and they're shooting fireballs at you. And when you get to the center of the camp, and it's just a random camp, it has nothing to do with the story. And when you get into the camp, there's a chest in there, and it has a fireball spell.
I remember
and
that.
I thought that was really
yeah.
cool because
Yeah.
it's like it's stupid that a bunch of dudes would be guarding one spell in a chest in real life. Like that's stupid, right? They would have they'd have like cheese and bread and shit around, like it's
Yeah.
swords and whatever. But like it works for a game because you don't want to go find like a bunch of like staplers and office supplies when you infiltrate a post. You want to find like a cool item, or like you want to be rewarded as the player. And I feel like in
Yeah.
Starfield, it felt like it was more interested in simulate. Like I found like their old half-eaten sandwiches and shit.
I found one where I went in, and it was one of the first ones, and I had the same thing where it disinterested me, where I went in and the music got it was a cave, and the music got a little bit scary, and where I dropped in, there was like a big like skeleton of a beast, and I was like, oh fuck, there's gonna be some guys in here. And I went in and skulked around, and it was empty.
Yeah.
It was just like there was nothing in there. I found a med pack and something else, and then there was a jumping area to get out of a different exit, and that was it. And I was like, oh, did I miss something? And I went back in to see if I missed something, and I hadn't. And I was like, oh, okay.
This is also how I feel about Tears of the Kingdom, though, because I feel like Tears of the Kingdom does do you're not finding staplers and shit. You're finding like in-game items that make sense, like health and whatever, and crafting materials. But I feel like because I was so disinterested in a lot of the game's mechanics, because there's like, it has to do with the weapon durability stuff a little bit. You're not finding a sword that you're going to have for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like there was anything. It not only wasn't there anything in the caves that would interest me, there wasn't the possibility that there would be anything interesting in the caves, because there was nothing that interested me in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like do you remember whenever you came across a vault in Fallout, it was like fucking Christmas.
Yeah.
You're like, even if this is a boring one, it'll be interesting enough. There'll be like some cool shit in there, or like a dungeon. You know, I'm gonna get some of these fucking crystals and kill some cool skeletons and stuff. And I have not had, for as good as the combat is in this game, I have not had any of those like interesting little moments really at all.
Yeah.
Outside of the quests that you're given.
The other thing I'll say is like finding new. There were moments where this game reminded me a bit of Borderlands, because I was like, it does feel like more of a looter shooter than I expected it to, or like Destiny or something. And I would get like a really cool like gold text gun or whatever. It just felt like I got so many of them so early that there wasn't enough scarcity for me to feel like it was that exciting when I got a new one. It just felt like I was kind of like getting another gold, another purple, another gold, and another gold, another purple, and then I was just comparing stats and throwing trash on the ground.
Yeah, that's fair. I've got shed loads of them now as well. All right. I think that's all the questions about Starfield. I can't think of anything else. We've almost gone 2 hours, so I feel like that's pretty good, Starfield. I really like Starfield. I'm going to keep playing it. I think it's really interesting. I wish there was more weird in it. I wish the missions were a bit more interesting. But I'm in for the long haul, and I am hoping that it's a great game. It's not excellent, and I'm hoping that it becomes excellent. But yeah, I think it's really good. I can 100%. I have been like over the years quite. I would almost use the word protective of Bethesda Game Studios, BGS Maryland. I have always thought that the memification of Todd Howard and the way in which people talk about those games, especially the people who don't understand games development or games design, and I would consider myself one of those people too, has been reductive and off the mark, and has over amplified bugs. And people didn't like Fallout 4 for lots of reasons, but that game was really well made, and a lot of people really fucking liked it. In the same way that Fallout New Vegas was super buggy, and people talk about that game like it was the second coming of Christ now. There's always been, the long tail on these games has always been somewhat distorted from the reality based on what people think about Bethesda. And, if they're, if Fallout 76 pissed people off, Fallout Online not coming out pissed people, all these different things. I think in many ways Starfield is them being a bit conservative to just try and steady the ship a little bit. Like in terms of technology, in terms of the scope of the game, it's vast, it's impressive. I think it's impressive that it works on the consoles and PCs as well. The shooting's good. Like it does a lot. It's not safe like that, but it definitely feels like probably they had a lot of producers working on this game, making sure it all fucking came together really, 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 really well. And they definitely did. But it's just missing a little bit of soul to me. There's something there that I wish was more, that I felt in those old games, and that's not quite there.
Yeah, I will say, I think I totally agree. I really admire Todd Howard, and I really admire the level of like craft that goes into these games and the level of ambition. I feel like I've been like watching I watched like the old documentaries that people put out around Bethesda for like Oblivion and more. It was Oblivion or Morrowind. I watched it months ago. I can't remember now. But at that time, there was a quote where Todd Howard talked about how his interest was in making sandbox RPGs. And there was a headline that dropped recently about Elder Scrolls 6, that it's going to be like the biggest fantasy, like simulation world possible and whatever. And I think that
back to Daggerfall, baby. Let's go.
Let's fucking go. I feel like in a world where Todd Howard was just given $1 trillion and his whole career was just like, it doesn't matter, just like try whatever. I think he would have done more interesting, more sandboxy RPGs than he has done. I feel like personally, a lot of these Bethesda games are trapped in a superposition between, on one hand, a more big, grand narrative RPG, and on the other hand, a more purely sandboxy experience. And I think in the future we'll
victims of their success.
Yeah, well, totally. Because like if they made it pure, like if they made something like Kenshi or like a Dwarf Fortress, I think people would have had the pitchforks out in Bethesda, Maryland. People would have been pissed because there's a lot of people who just want like a big story game to play when they get home from work, which makes sense.
If they made fucking Morrowind today.
Oh yeah.
Everyone would hate them.
Yeah. Because people would be like lost and confused.
What the fuck is this? Yeah. This is weird. But
I think that in a world where like where games weren't big business and where Todd Howard didn't have to worry about like making sure the shareholders didn't like crucify him after the game flopped, because
it is a privately held. Oh no, it's not. Well, it is a private company.
Okay, well then
I guess not anymore because it's owned by Microsoft. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, regardless, if he didn't have to worry about people like losing their houses and their mortgages, lapsing, all this stuff, if money was not an option, I think Todd Howard's career would have gone very differently, because I think he would have leaned way harder into the sandbox element, because that is clearly a thing that interests him. But he like talks about that's like the thing that interested him as a young developer, is like RPG sandboxes, having worlds where you can go and like craft your own adventure. And I think Bethesda has always had shades of that, but I feel personally like it's always been kind of stuck between sandbox and narrative, and I feel like because of that it has never been able to like properly fully take flight in either camp. And I kind of wish that there was like a Bethesda version of Kenshi. I wish there was a game that was just like, you're like a one-legged slave on a desert planet, figure it out.
In a way, I feel like the success, I think I can hear what you're saying. I do also think that there are certain people within the organization who like the fact that they make some of the biggest games in the world, and I think he's probably one of them too. Yeah. Like that's an exciting prospect. I do wonder if the success of these games on consoles, once like Morrowind did really well on Xbox One, Oblivion was obviously massive on Xbox 360, and I do think that computationally that probably puts a ceiling on some of this stuff, which also, like to your point, limits it somewhat.
Yeah, for sure.
That's fair. I do think that this one does a lot less of the trying to be everyone's game a bit, which is, I think, good. I think more of the systems in this game are fun. It doesn't feel like some of the games where I feel like I'm not doing 50% of it. Like Fallout 4 felt a lot like that with the outposts, where you kind of got and you kind of had to do some of it. And I don't feel that with this one, which is saying something, because there's a lot more particular systems in this game that you can't avoid that you might not like the dogfighting, but everything I feel like for the most part is, doesn't get in your way or whatever. Yeah. But yeah. Starfield. There it is. Frank, can we talk about the two other games we played for like maybe 2 minutes?
Sure.
We'll talk about them properly next week. Armored Core 6. What did you make of it?
Wow. I knew I was going to get it because it's from Software. I can't not get it. I didn't buy it midnight launch.
Oh yeah, I played Kingsfield recently.
Yeah. There's skeletons. I like games with skeletons. There's no skeletons in Armored Core as far as I know yet, but maybe on other planets.
Oh, they should make a Kingsfield, but it's like Jason and the Argonaut style, like
Yes.
stop motion skeletons.
Yes.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
So I waited for early impressions of Armored Core, and then as soon as I saw like that the game structure of it was like mission select, like go do this mission, or there's like arena 1v1. It was like, oh, this seems like it'd be way more manageable than another giant open world game. And so because even looking at screenshots and gameplay video, it's like the UI, it's honestly not that different than Starfield's like dogfighting. You have the same different weapon management, energy levels and things like that. But I tried it immediately. The movement, you're running around in a giant mech, you're flying down, you can stomp on little cars, there's buildings. It's so cool. And the thing I've discovered, the fun of it is you can really customize your mech to whatever playstyle you want. You can dual wield guns, you can have a shield, an energy sword, you can be a tank, You can have spider legs, you can make it look like a Gundam, you can make it look like an Ava robot or whatever. I have a bubblegum crisis head. The real selling point for me is they hired like the top 3 anime mech designers. They got the person who is in charge of the designs in Evangelion. They got the inventor of Macross. There's another huge creator involved. So it's
nice.
It's legit. And I know I never played the original Armored Cores, but playing this feels like a legit awesome like PS1 or PS2 game. It's great. And then like 4 hours in, I hit like the first really hard boss fight, but it took like an hour, and then I crushed it. And the trophy percentage was like 43%. So I don't know if the rest of the game is that hard, but in my 5 hours playing it, it exceeded my expectations. I think this game is really cool.
Excellent. There you go. Armored Core 6. We'll get a little bit more into it next week. The Making of Karateka, I'm just going to briefly say I really enjoyed it. It's out now on Steam. I think it's coming to Switch soon enough as well, or I'm not quite sure when, to be honest. Really enjoyed it. Karateka's not a game that I'm like a huge fan of playing, honestly, but I enjoyed the history of the game and all the videos they put together and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, shout out to friend of the show, Drew Scanlon, and all those folks over at Digital Eclipse. It is $20 on Steam, the first of their Gold Master series. Hopefully the first of many. Go check it out if you like video game history and documentaries about them and stuff like that, which you may do if you listen to this podcast. We are at PAX West Saturday, September 2nd, 2:30 Pacific. The Monarch Theatre. Myself and Frank will be there. We're going to have a bunch of we're going to have a reveal of a documentary that if you're not a patron, you will not have known about yet. We're going to have some videotapes there. We're going to have some clips from upcoming docs as well. And we'll be there chewing the fat, talking about what we played at PAX and answering your questions and all that stuff. So PAX West on Saturday, September 2nd. That is the Saturday that is coming up right now as you listen to this. 2:30 Pacific in the Monarch Theatre. We shall see you there. Patreon.com/NoClip to support this podcast. Jeremy Dane, what are you doing for the rest of your week?
I got to film some secret documentary footage that people going to the PAX panel may or may not see.
Oh yeah, they will probably.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
So if you're going to be at PAX, I'm talking about something that you'll know what it is. And other than that, yeah, I don't know. Probably do a little game dev. I've been working on a little first-person RPG of my own. Todd Howard, look the fuck out.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm coming for you, Todd.
Daggerfall 2, it's called.
And listen, this is an open invite. Todd, if you're listening, you can come and you can record a podcast where you shit on my game for 2 hours. No, I'm just kidding. Starfield is a really cool game. But seriously, Todd, if you want to criticize my game for 2 hours, I would love that.
Did you hear his voice in the game?
No, where was it?
I found him.
What?
Did you find him, Frank? He is in Neon. It is what's the name of the shipbuilding company that your friend...
Strauss
Eklund? Yeah, and is that Strauss Eklund?
Yeah.
If you go to or whatever it is, Strauss Eklund, if you go to their shop on the main concourse in Neon, and where there's a lady on the inside who sells stuff, if you go in, listen outside the shop, there's like a advertisement playing, and it's Todd Howard saying the advertisement.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So he's in there. You should call your game the Jeremy Scroll.
That's actually how'd you get my design document?
Get Emil Pagliarillo to add some flavor.
He's a fellow
to that
Boston boy. I think that wouldn't be a big
I know,
ask.
right?
Yeah.
You gotta play Fallout 4, man. I want to know how you feel about Fallout 4.
I'll once I'm like there's like Sea of Stars, there's Baldur's Gate, there's like Starfield. I don't have enough time to play all these video games.
No, there's a lot. Yeah, way more. I'm still making my way through Baldur's Gate and everything. All right, that's the podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out, everyone. Cheers to Jesse for editing the podcast as ever, especially this super long one. And we'll see you next week. Bye.